Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has adopted Mother Council bashing. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Scarface101 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1, The Mother He Never Had. Sochi-kun, your breakfast is ready, called a female voice from the kitchen. Naruto yawned tiredly and got up from his bed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He made his way towards the table where he usually eats his meals. The rich and tantalizing aroma of food helped coax his mind from his drowsy state. Standing in the kitchen is none other than his adoptive mother actually, the Kyubi no Kitsune Kurama. Years ago, the boy made a contract with the bijou residing inside of him, in exchange for creating a blood clone to transfer her conscious mind into granting her significantly more freedom. She would grant him any request in her power to give. He asked for the one thing he wanted most, a mother. How did the boy know to create a blood clone? The Kyubi provided him the knowledge to create one. Once she inhabited the body, she molded it much like clay to suit her tastes. She had blood-red hair, bright pink eyes with black slit pupils, whisker-like marks on her cheeks just like her adopted child, tan caramel-colored skin giving her an exotic appearance. A perfect hourglass-shaped body with a large set of breasts matching that of a certain female Sanin, and her nails on her fingers and toes resembled that of claws. She wore a simple crimson kimono with a black sash tied loosely around her waist, which helped expose much of her skin, particularly her legs and bust, which she often used to her advantage. Naruto smiled brightly at his mother and spoke to her. Kurama-san, you spoil me. She chuckled in amusement at his statement, although it was partially true. The Kyubi no Kitsune would never have thought in her entire existence that she would take care of a human like her own kid. But still, seeing him ask for a mother, and then being exposed to him daily, now woke up her maternal instincts. Now. I told you to call me Ka-chan, none of that san business. We are family now, yes? She asked him while serving a plate of blueberry pancakes slathered in syrup. It amazed the blonde on how quickly his adoptive mother picked up on cooking. The first time she tried, she well exploded the kitchen after trying to put water on the boil. She viewed the arts of cooking as a challenge and wouldn't be deterred, so she practiced day and night, studied cooking techniques and recipes for hours on end until she got it right. She started from the basics and then, at a surprisingly rapid pace, began to move towards more advanced meals that were befitting of a restaurant or a professional chef. He merely smiled and tore into his meal. The syrup she used was homemade by herself and was significantly better than anything store-bought. In fact, most of the ingredients she uses are either homemade or homegrown, since she made her own garden on the roof of their apartment. What she couldn't make for herself, she bought, of course. Though he still got his monthly stipend from the Hokage, his adoptive mother insisted on getting her own line of work, though she didn't tell him what it was. I still don't know where or how you learned to make homemade syrup, he commented while crying anime tears. The food she made for him daily gave him a feeling of happiness. Was it because she always worked so hard to prepare the best and freshest meals for him? Perhaps so, but this barely even scratched the surface on what a mother's love was. You'd be amazed what you might pick up if you read the appropriate books at a library. Now hurry up and finish, you don't want to be late for the academy, do you? When she asked that last part, he had a downcast look on his face but nodded all the same. The bijou narrowed her eyes slightly, wondering if she had said something wrong. No, was he having problems at the academy? Sochi-kun, is something the matter? If you're struggling in the academy, you can talk to me about it. She asked him in a gentle manner, hoping to coax him into telling her his troubles. His only response was to shake his head and reply that he was fine before running out of the door before she had the chance to use the dreaded mom look that most mothers had that could easily subdue their children. She sighed and shook her head, commenting to herself, boys will be boys. Oh well, I'd best clean up a little before work. With that, she snapped her fingers, causing the dirty dishes to float in the air and make their way towards the kitchen sink. The water turned on and began rinsing the plates as dish soap was sprayed out. Being a creature of pure chakra did have its perks. While she was largely limited and found this human form a little bit cramped, she could still use some of her vast power. Though she only used it for small things these days, but it still served her purposes. She then noticed that a bento she made for Naruto's lunch was left behind. Oh dear. Careless child. He forgot his lunch. I'd be a terrible example of a mother if I let my child go hungry. I'll bring it to him around lunchtime at the academy. She spoke to herself and retrieved the bento before heading out the door and locking the apartment behind her. She then snapped her fingers and appeared directly in front of a club. What was her job, you might wonder? Well, she served as a songstress, a waitress, a bouncer, and occasionally an escort. Yep, she was a jack of all trades inside this club. She entered inside and placed the bento in her locker to keep it safe for later. Her Geta sandals made a clack-clack sound for every step she took down the club's halls in the back. The owner of the club, one Madame Nuki, An attractive and well-aged woman in allegedly her 50s or so enthusiastically greeted Kurama with a large smile. "Ah, Kurama-san. As punctual as ever. This is a little embarrassing, but do you mind working as an escort? One of the ladies has a case of the flu, and she needs a temporary replacement." The QB merely smiled at the owner and replied in a casual manner, "But of course. I wouldn't mind. Work is still work." At the red-haired woman's response, Madame Nuki smiled and ushered the disguised Bijou to a booth where she would meet her clients. Kurama sat down on the comfortable leather seat and pulled out a small case. She opened it with a click, revealing a multitude of cigarettes. She had recently taken up smoking, if only to dull her heightened sense of smell. Expensive colognes, perfumes, and various pungent scents would make her nose wrinkle and cause her to make weird faces. To avoid this, she began to smoke cigarettes to drown out such scents. Of course, she didn't expose Naruto to her smoking since she didn't want him to get any secondhand smoking in. And on a side note, she wasn't overly concerned about the health of her body. If this blood clone expired by any means, then she could simply make a new one with her Sochi-kun's help. "Got a light?" she asked in a sultry manner while holding the cigarette between her fingers. Her current client chuckled and produced a lighter from his pocket, then lit her cigarette for her, followed by his own. He then sat down, revealing himself to be one Asuma Saratobi. "The Tanuki Club, huh? Heard this place was good. When I came to check it out, I was told by Madame Nuki that Kurama Kitsune was the most expensive girl in the club. I wonder why that is?" he asked while taking a drag from his cigarette. "I know what men want. And I know how to give them what they want," she replied in a cryptic manner, exhaling smoke from her nostrils. "Interesting, and what is it that I want?" he asked with a small smirk while flicking off the ashes of his cigarette, then extended his hand out towards her. Instead of replying, she held up a finger with a coy smile. Now. At least buy me dinner first. We play things at my pace or not at all. Besides, I have something you most desperately want." She spoke out with her pink eyes briefly flashing crimson. "Something I want?" he muttered as hearts filled his eyes and he began to drool slightly, but he caught himself and wiped the saliva away with a napkin. Unknown to him, he was now caught in her pace, a pseudo-hypnosis where she controls the flow of events and thoughts at her leisure. Which is how she gained so many paying clients without ever performing intercourse with them. As an escort, she was basically paid for simply talking to them. And she would often learn interesting things. "But of course. Tell me, Shinobi-san, does your special one know you are cheating on him or her?" she asked with a smile, a pair of sharp fangs appearing as she exhaled smoke into his face. He coughed slightly, managing to hold onto his own cigarette with his fingers. "How did you know?" he asked in surprise, since he hadn't mentioned anything about having somebody. "Your lighter. At first glance it appears to be rather ordinary, but on closer inspection it is made of silver. A rather pricey gift. Could only come from someone quite close," she answered while holding said lighter in her hands. The sight of it made him check his pockets to find that it was indeed gone. When had she taken it? He didn't even feel anything, and he was a jonin, for crying out loud. No ordinary pickpocket could do that. "Wondering how I managed to acquire this lighter of yours? Well, I'll leave that to your interpretation." She spoke in a sultry manner, leaning over the table with her large bust pressing against it. She was now so close to his face that Asuma could feel her hot breath against his face. She then snuffed out her cigarette in an ashtray and produced a new one from her cleavage and placed it between her lips and pressed the unlit cigarette to his own. Asuma's face flushed, and he felt his loins burning. Was this what was called a cigarette kiss? Kurenai would never do something like that for him. Kurama chuckled and produced a pocket watch from her bust. She clicked it open, revealing that their time was up. "Too bad. We didn't get to the juicy bits. Come again soon?" she asked in a sultry manner while replacing the lighter in his pocket in a smooth and delicate motion. All the while Asuma felt like he needed more of this woman's time. Everything about her made him crave more, but he was unaware that he was still entrapped in her pace. The time limit was to give him the illusion that their time together was limited and that it had already flown by before he had the chance to really get to know her. He fished out his wallet and put all the money he had on the table in front of her. Will this be enough for an extension?" he asked her almost desperately. Kurama's eyes flashed crimson again. Human males were often so easy to manipulate. Even if she was now a mother, she was still a feisty vixen. And playing with the minds of men while getting paid for it was all the better. She slid back into her seat, allowing her bust to drag across the table. She then took the money and placed it inside her kimono sleeves for herself. "But of course. However, I have a prior engagement, and I cannot afford to miss it. Do come again tomorrow. I'll be sure to fit you in for some extra time." He could only nod as he tried to get up and leave, only to feel himself stumble a bit as though he were in a drunken stupor. Fantasies of him and Kurama flooding his mind as he left. The kitsune smiled, since she now had another client willing to open his wallet to her for some honeyed words and empty promises of sex. This loan of work definitely suited her. Kurama-sama? I'm glad to see you again, spoke another voice of a masculine nature. She turned her head and saw it was one Kizashi Haruno, the current head of the civilian council, one of her regular clients. She so loved to bleed his wallet dry. He has already spent hundreds of thousands of ryo just for some of her time. Although this time, he was carrying a bouquet of flowers. Era? Kizashi-san? I don't recall our appointment being so early in the day, she commented in a coy manner to mask her irritation at his presence. She didn't want to be late to deliver her kid's lunch. And she had a decent idea what was coming. Her pace did have one downside to it. Yes. I know I couldn't help myself because I love you, Kurama-sama. I want you to be my wife. I'll leave Mabuki and we can get married. I can get started on the wedding preparations right away, he proclaimed while dropping down to one knee as he proposed to her. Kurama inwardly sighed since the one flaw of her pace made the victim more and more obsessed with her and would lose sense of free will with prolonged exposure to her pace. With enough time, the victim might not even be able to eat, sleep, bathe, or even use the restroom without her suggesting it. My apologies, Kizashi-san, but I must decline. My heart already belongs to another, she replied in a callous manner, not even caring if she shattered his heart. He was a good cash cow to exploit, but now he was useless to her. Fortunately, Konoha didn't have a shortage of men for her to play with and manipulate for her own gain. The pink-haired man growled in an almost feral manner and swiftly grabbed her arm. Despite the pain, she didn't resist. She expected him to lash out at her in some way. No one denies me, Kurama-sama. Not even you can. I know where you live and who you live with. I know that you have taken the QB brat under your wing. One word from me, and I can make life completely unbearable for him. Now I demand you be my wife before something happens to that little shit. He spoke in a malicious tone, his eyes filled with apparent madness. A low growl rumbled deep within the kitsun's throat. He dared to threaten her beloved kit? The one thing she valued? If that were the case, then she would take everything from him. Kizashi? If you truly want me to be your wife, then prove it to me. She spoke in a sickly sweet tone, enrapturing him back into her pace. Prove it? How? I will do anything for you, he yelled out in an all too desperate tone of voice. The kitsune leaned in close and used her index finger to sensually trace Kizashi's lips, making him get a weak in the knees feeling at her very touch. You can prove it to me by changing your will. If something unfortunate were to happen to you, then how would I be taken care of? Leave everything in your possession to me, and I shall be your bride. Oh, and as a dowry, you can take 100,000 ryo from your safe in your home and bring it directly to me. Don't tell your wife or child anything. I shall tell them myself once the arrangements of our wedding has been made. She spoke in a businesslike manner, with an undertone of seduction, her pink eyes flashing crimson once again. Of course. I can do all of that today. Where should I meet you to give you your dowry? He asked in an excited tone, absolutely giddy that he was going to be married to the one and only Kurama Kitsune. Meet me at the hot springs. They're doing a mixed bathing night, and I have it booked for all night long, she replied in a husky manner, making Kizashi turn a neon pink as he rushed out the door to fulfill her demands. Kurama smiled and held up a thick roll of cash that she had fished out of his pocket. Like taking candy from a baby. Pitiful fool. Fantasize about me all you like, Kizashi-san. I look forward to the face of despair you make when I break your blackened heart, she whispered to herself in a sadistic manner. She then took notice of the clock and saw it would soon be time for lunch at the academy. She would need to hurry if she wanted to get Naruto's bento to him. Madam Nuki? I'll be stepping out for a little while. I need to take my Sochi-kun's lunch to him. I nearly forgot. Here is your cut of my earnings. Kurama spoke to her boss and handed over a percentage of the cash she acquired. The aged matrons widened to the point it seemed like they might pop out of their sockets as she yelped out, That much? For that amount, you can take the rest of the day off if you want. And I need to know, how do you earn so much from so few clients? The kitsune merely chuckled and answered with a devilish smile, simple. I keep them in my pace. I shall be back later. I need to earn as much as possible for my Sochi-kun's care and welfare after all. At that last statement, the matron looked ready to burst into tears at the love and affection the red-haired woman had for her child. She pulled a handkerchief from her sleeve and dabbed her watering eyes while waving goodbye to her best employee. Kurama wasted no time in retrieving her kid's lunch and walked towards the academy. As she walked down Konoha's streets, she remembered that Naruto's birthday was just around the corner. She would need to prepare a cake and find him a good present. She thought about giving him a generous amount of birthday money to spend on whatever he wanted. She frowned at herself, believing that it was too generic to just give him money alone. He deserved something extra special. Something that would show that she really put effort into finding him a great gift. She couldn't ask him since then he might see it coming. She wanted to surprise him. She wasn't sure about what kind of cake he might want either. Would he prefer chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry? Some other kind of flavor? She didn't know. She might be an exceptionally powerful and virtually unstoppable force of nature, even in this cramped blood clone, but she wasn't all-knowing. Her ears twitched slightly as she heard the sounds of muffled yapping. She turned her head slightly and saw a pet store, a bunch of puppies at the display window happily playing with each other, or sitting in front of the window and watching people walk by. Smiling at the adorable creatures, she snapped her clawed fingers, making several small bones appear for the puppies to chew on or play with. Suddenly an idea struck her: she could get her kid a pet. Something to keep him company whenever she wasn't around would be good for him. But no ordinary dog or cat would do. She needed something extra special. Ordinary isn't good enough for her kid after all. Deciding to keep this idea on file inside her mind, she continued onward towards the academy. She received the usual looks of men, and occasionally women, who found her attractive. Said onlookers who had their significant others with them would be quite loudly berated, making the kitsune chuckle in amusement. In all honesty, she still didn't care much for humans. But it wasn't the common folks' fault that she and her siblings were sealed away to be used as weapons. She could blame Hashirama for that one. Still, it didn't matter as much anymore. She is here and now, and her kit was the most important thing in her existence now. Come to think of it, he might need a nice girlfriend or 10. He needed lots of love given his lonely childhood after all. Does she spoil him too much? Maybe so, but he did kind of deserve it. He didn't ask to be her container, and she couldn't hold him at fault for it. Especially not after he asked her to be his adoptive mother. She hadn't told him about his real parents yet, nor did she know how to tell him, much less when. Was there even a good time to tell him the truth? She didn't know. Perhaps she would just know? In her opinion, human emotions were both foreign and complex to her, especially since she had repeatedly attempted to sever off all contact with humans. Though that was now moot. She should have done what she was doing now, hiding in plain sight amongst the humans. Her musing was interrupted when she finally reached the academy, with minutes to spare no less. Her ears twitched as she heard the sounds of grunting and blows landing. Raising an eyebrow in curiosity, she hopped on top of the wall surrounding the academy grounds. What she saw filled her with fury. At first glance it seemed like a regular class spar, but from her perspective it appeared that Uchiha boy her kit described had Naruto pinned to the ground and was pummeling her poor kit's face in. The Chunin teachers in charge didn't seem to be doing anything to stop the match despite the protests of some of the students. Naruto often come home, covered in bruises. He would claim that they were from class spars. She had no reason to disbelieve him, but now? She'd need to speak to him later on about this. For now she had to help her precious kit. In a blur of motion, she appeared behind Sasuke and grabbed his drawn-back fist before he could land another blow. She didn't bother to mask her killing intent. She wanted nothing more to tear the Uchiha limb from limb. However, her rational mind knew that would cause more problems than it would solve at this time. Sasuke Uchiha, yes? Would you kindly stop beating my child? She asked with a sickly sweet grin, her intent to kill being so strong the Uchiha had a vision of his arm being torn out of its socket. Fearing for his life and limb, he relented and held up his free hand in surrender. Who are you? And did you just call Naruto your child? Asked a certain scarred Chunin in utter disbelief. Unable to imagine the orphan Naruto ever having a mother. In the background the entire class stood slack-jawed. If this was Naruto's mother, he was one lucky bastard. But of course. I apologize for the interruption, but I couldn't help myself since I saw my Sochi-kun getting beaten so harshly. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Kurama Kitsune, Naruto's adoptive mother. Here's my card, teacher-san. She replied and slipped her business card from the Tanuki Club into Irika's pocket with a small wink, making the Chunin blush at her dignified albeit sultry demeanor. On the ground, Naruto was looking up at the Kitsune with tears welling up in his eyes. She always worked so hard to be a good mother to him, so he didn't want to burden her further with his own problems at school. Ka-san, he was silenced by his mother, who planted her fingers on his lips, a gentle smile adorning her face. Hush, Sochi-kun. I am not angry at you. We will talk about this later. Now then, about these bruises and swelling I know. Magic kisses. She gently placed her hands on either side of his face and planted 2 kisses, one on each cheek. Then, like magic, the swelling on his face went down and the bruising vanished in seconds. Irika wondered if she had used some type of medical jutsu. Was she an ex-kanuchi? He couldn't tell at this time. His musing was broken when he discovered that Kurama's face was just centimeters from his, her bright pink eyes boring into him, making him reel back in surprise. She tilted her head slightly and spoke in an even tone. Teacher-san? I am curious on why you didn't stop the match when it was obvious Naruto-kun couldn't fight back or defend himself properly. Oh. Well, me and my assistant didn't feel it was the appropriate time to break it up. We were waiting for Naruto to surrender, but he was too stubborn. He spoke unconvincingly, his voice wavering under her gaze. Is that so? I find that to be a rather poor excuse. In fact, I am now quite concerned about the quality of the learning environment my child is in. I demand you allow me to observe the rest of your classes to ensure that my little boy is receiving the best available education. If you refuse me, then I shall file and report an official complaint to Hokage-sama about possible negligence or teachers that can't perform their jobs. She spoke in a way that said she wouldn't take no for an answer. Both Mizuki and Iruka sweated nervously. Should they let her in? If they refused, then the Hokage getting involved could be even worse for them. Besides, they were Chunin and she wasn't even a real kunoichi. What could she possibly do? As you wish, Kurama-san. The scarred Chunin answered her in a defeated tone. Nodding in acceptance, the kitsune discreetly created a shadow clone to work in her place at the club until her business here was finished. Very good. You may continue as normal. Just ignore my presence. I promise not to interfere unless I see certain inconsistencies. She spoke with a mirthless smile, sending shivers down the Academy teacher's spines. With that said and done, they ushered the students inside and announced that there would be an exam. One by one the students filed into the classroom and took their seats. Kurama herself followed the Chunin teachers rather closely, then she took one of the chairs meant for the Chunin, which so happened to belong to Mizuki. Kurama-san? That's my seat. Mizuki spoke in dismay, then he blushed as Kurama crossed her legs and removed her Geta sandals, her hand running along her smooth caramel-colored skin. She flexed her clawed toes for a moment, then gave a light-hearted chuckle. So it is, teacher-san. It might be impertinent of me, but you wouldn't allow a lady to sit on the floor, would you? She asked in a husky manner, her tongue slowly gliding across her own lips. The silver-haired Chunin had hearts in his eyes, unable to resist this woman's charms. Inwardly, Kurama was laughing at these imbeciles since she didn't even need to put them in her pace to get her way. She then smiled and spoke in a sultry manner. Teacher-san? Could you perchance get me something cool to drink? I am quite parched after being out in the sun. At that, Mizuki dashed out of the classroom to hunt down the nearest vending machine to acquire a beverage for the red-haired woman. Iruka, however, groaned, knowing this woman was going to be a distraction. Her constant allure and seductive demeanor definitely showed the kind of parentage that Naruto was receiving. Trying to distract himself, he began to pass out exam sheets to the students, each one marked with said student's name in advance. Finally, he was about to hand over a paper to Naruto, only to find it replaced with a sheet of paper with a smiley face doodled onto it. Pardon my asking, but would you care to explain why my Sochi-kun's exam sheet has a genjutsu on it? Asked the voice of Kurama, holding up the exam sheet with an overly sweet smile belying the venom coating her words. When how the scarred Chunin fumbled over his words, wondering how she stole the paper from under his nose. I detected the presence of chakra in your little stack of paper, so I decided to investigate, and I find a genjutsu placed over my child's exam. I trust there is a reason for this, yes? She asked again, her eyes holding a sharp edge to them. In the background, the various students were whispering amongst themselves. It was no secret that Iruka never liked Naruto, but putting a genjutsu on his test? That was just low. Oh, of course. The genjutsu is a test in itself to see if he can identify and dispel a genjutsu. The Chunin attempted to lie through his teeth. The kitsune, however, being a natural trickster and manipulator, wasn't convinced in the slightest. Really? You girl, did either of your senseis teach your class about detecting and or dispelling genjutsu? She asked while pointing at Ino Yamanaka. The clan heiress glanced at her sensei, then replied in a bitter tone, due to her now questioning Iruka's ability to teach. He taught us the basic principles on genjutsu and the theory behind them. But practically? He never taught us to spot or dispel them. Is that so? If that's the case, then why give Naruto-kun a test? He clearly wasn't prepared for him. The kitsune asked with sadistic glee, obviously enjoying herself as Iruka is unable to form an appropriate response. He pales to the a similar complexion of a certain Sanin, and drops the exam papers in his hands. When they fell to the floor, one of them appeared at Kurama's feet. And it was marked for Sasuke. Raising an eyebrow in curiosity, she noticed that this one was different from the rest. She picked it up and looked it over for a moment. Her sadistic smile widened even further as she asked, Teacher-san? Sasuke Uchiha is allegedly the Rookie of the Year candidate, yes? Then explain to me why his exam is in a simplified form with nothing but multiple choice questions? At her question, the Chunin felt the sudden urge to relieve himself. The hell? Let me see that! One Kiba Inuzuka shouted, wanting to see for himself if it was true. Without question, the kitsune allowed him to see the simplified exam. After a few moments, the dog boy yelled out to the class and confirmed it to be true. The students whispered amongst themselves, was Sasuke's alleged greatness and talent, was most of it fabricated? They all looked towards Sasuke, but his back was facing the class, which prevented them from seeing his face. But inwardly, the Uchiha was seething that this woman was interfering in his business. The civilian council arranged it for him so that he would have an easier time passing the academy, and then get real shinobi training. Now with her interference, he'd have to wait longer for his chance to kill Itachi. I believe I have seen more than enough. Sochi-kun? We are leaving now. This must be immediately reported to the Hokage, she announced while extending her hand towards her kit. He could only take it as he followed her out. It was at this moment Mizuki appeared with his arms loaded with drinks from vending machines. Sorry it took so long, Kurama-san. I didn't know what you liked, so I got a bit of everything. He spoke out with a smile that was not quite charming. Oh, you didn't have to go and do that, Chunin-san. But I thank you nonetheless, she replied while snatching out a bottle of soda and handed it over to her kit. Then she grabbed some bottled tea for herself. She then slipped a business card into his vest and promptly left with her kit. All the while Mizuki had hearts in his eyes while watching Kurama's retreating form. Screw this. I am going home and telling Daddy about this, yelled Ino while slamming her fists on her desk, which broke both Chunin teachers out of their respective stupors. She's right. If you can rig both Naruto-kun's and Sasuke's exams and tests, what about the rest of us? How can we trust you both as teachers now? Hinata spoke up with a small frown. Many of the students agreed with this line of thought and promptly left the classroom before either Irika or Mizuki had registered what happened. Did I miss something? Was the only intelligent thing that Mizuki found himself able to say. Irika, however, didn't budge from his spot. He was now ruined. Later. Hokage's office. So you're Naruto-kun's mother, eh? He told me he had been adopted, but I thought that some of the things he told me about you were exaggerated. The Hokage spoke while looking over Sasuke's exam sheet, finding it to be overly simplified to the point a 4-year-old could solve it, and more than half the questions were common knowledge anyway. Indeed. I was concerned about the learning environment my child was in when I first saw the beating Naruto-kun was getting, and the teachers weren't doing anything about it. So I decided to investigate a little bit. When I took notice of the unfair exam papers, I decided that enough was enough and promptly came straight here with my child. She summarized and pointed at the blonde boy sitting next to her. I thank you for your initiative in exposing this embarrassment. I promise to investigate this even further. I'll also postpone graduation since we might be sending unprepared genin to their potential doom. But I am curious why you, Naruto, didn't report any of this. The Sandaime spoke at the end in curiosity, turning his attention towards the blonde. I thought I could handle it on my own. I chose to ignore it because I didn't think anyone would ever believe me. It was the word of a Chunin against the word of the Academy's dead last. Who would you believe? At his statement, the kitsune flicked him on the head, making him yelp in pain and slap a hand over the stinging red mark now on his forehead. Naruto. Ignoring a problem isn't the same as solving it. This is why you have me around now. If anything is bothering you, anything at all, don't hesitate to come to me about it. I'll always be there to help you. That's one of the many reasons you wanted a mother, yes? Then don't even worry about being a burden to me and just ask. Okay? She spoke in a reassuring tone and scooped him up into a warm hug. The Sandaime smiled at this. It seemed the boy finally found a loving and nurturing mother whom accepted the boy for what he was. He was sure that Kushina would approve of this Kurama kitsune even if he felt something slightly off about her. Where was she even from? From her skin tone she might come from Suna or Kumo. But he wasn't sure. Didn't matter though, since it was clear she truly loved Naruto. Thank you for the assistance. You may both go home now. The Hokage spoke with a small smile, deciding now would be a good time to make preparations for a proper investigation into the academy and its staff. With a nod, both Naruto and Kurama left to their apartment. When they arrived, Kurama set her kid on the couch and spoke to him. Sorry, Naruto-kun, but I have important business tonight that cannot afford to wait. And I can't send a shadow clone to go in my stead either. I'll arrange for a babysitter so you won't be alone. With a smile, she walked over towards the phone and began to dial a number. I'm too old to have a damn babysitter. I was taking care of myself before even you showed up. He yelled in protest, feeling slightly offended that she believed he needed a babysitter. She smiled in a coy manner and replied, call it a precaution. And I think you'll like this one. She waited a few seconds as the phone rang before the person on the other end picked up and answered. Kurama replied to the individual she was calling. Hi. It's me. Kurama. I apologize that this is such short notice, but would you come by and keep my Sochi-kun company? You will? Excellent. What's that? Sure, spoil him all you want. Thanks very much. With that done, she hung up the phone and snapped her fingers, creating a crimson two-piece bathing suit from thin air. Where you going with that? He asked with a raised eyebrow, unaware of Kurama's plot against Kizashi. I have business at the hot springs. The kind of business that could set us up for life, Sochi-kun. Try not to worry about it, she replied and slipped the bathing suit into the sleeves of her kimono. Ka-chan? Can I ask you something? The blonde spoke with a slightly saddened expression on his face. She saw the downcast look and gently rubbed his scalp, her pink eyes showing nothing but kindness and love to him. Ask me anything you want, Naruto-kun. As your mother, I'll always help you. What might be on your mind? she asked with a kind smile, all the while wondering what was wrong with him. One of three things came to mind. He had already gone through puberty, and she had already given him the talk, so he might have a girlfriend in mind and wants to ask her advice. He might be wondering about his real parents, or where he came from. And finally, he was finally going to ask why she attacked Konoha on the night of his birth. I was wondering if I could have a sister, he replied while scratching the back of his head. Kurama was caught off guard by such a request. Did I hear you correctly? Why would you want a sister? She asked him, hoping to better understand this newfound desire. She hadn't expected him to ask for something like that. Yeah. You heard me right. Thing is, I kind of want to know what it's like to have a sister. Hinata told me a little bit about hers so well now I can't stop thinking about what it might be like to have one. To play with her, laugh with her, cry with her, train with her, and so on. I know it's crazy and all, and I appreciate everything you do for me. I guess I'm just being a little selfish. He spoke in a sheepish manner. The kitsune viewed this as another challenge that would help make her kid happy. She smirked and patted him on the head while speaking in a reassuring voice. Naruto-kun, if a sister is what you want, then I shall find one for you. That's a promise. I will do anything to ensure your happiness. Now stop being so gloomy. Brighten up a bit. He chuckled a bit, his mood now lightening up a bit at his mother's promise. Though inwardly Kurama herself felt like tearing her hair out. Where was she supposed to find a sibling for her child? The moment was interrupted by a knocking sound at their door. With a small smile, the kitsune opened it, revealing the form of Anko Mitarashi holding 2 boxes of pizza, a big bag of dango, and 2 large bottles of soda in the crook of her arm. Hey Gaki-kun! Pizza delivery! Shouted the snake mistress with a broad smile on her face. She was perhaps one of Naruto's best and oldest friends, and a very positive influence on his life. His eyes turned to stars at her presence, making both females shake their heads in amusement. Thanks for coming so quickly, Anko-san. Kurama spoke and took some of the goodies off the kunoichi's hands to help her inside. Not a problem. Heh, I can't think of anyone who'd be crazy enough to ask me to look after their kids. But Naruto-kun's a special exception. She spoke and hugged the whiskered teen, his face now pressed against her bust. How much will I owe you when I return? The kitsune asked and placed the food on the kitchen counter for the 2 troublemakers to consume. This one's on the house. Me and the Gaki will be having ourselves a little party. The snake mistress replied while opening a bottle of soda for herself and Naruto to drink from. The kitsune nodded in appreciation and was about to give off a set of instructions, but the purple-haired kunoichi beat her to the punch by speaking. Yeah, I know. In bed by 10, no horror movies that will give him nightmares, and no dirty games until he graduates. The kitsune nodded in approval and took her leave, allowing both Naruto and Anko to gorge themselves and party the night away. Later. Konoha Hot Springs. Kurama was now bathing in the water with a content smile. It wasn't difficult to book the mixed bathing area for the night when she put the manager in her pace, allowing her to spend as much time as she wanted here free of charge. Now she had to wait to put her plan into action. Her ears perked up when she heard the sounds of footsteps approaching. You're late. She spoke in a harsh manner as the form of Kizashi appeared carrying a duffel bag filled with money. Sorry, Kurama-sama. Arrangements for the will took a little longer than expected. I also brought your dowry. He spoke in an apologetic manner and placed the money at the water's edge so she might inspect it for herself. Instead, she snapped her fingers, making the money vanish into thin air. Sensing his confusion, she clarified, Don't worry. I sent the money someplace else. Now forget everything about bringing me that dowry, conditions of my marrying you, and blackmailing me to marry you. She commanded, putting him in her pace. Once again. A dopey look formed on Kizashi as the memories faded out of his mind. He then shook his head to clear up his daze and dropped to one knee, about to propose to her with a large diamond ring, but before he could even get a word in he was stabbed in the throat by an unknown assailant. The kitsune feigned a look of shock as he looked up at her in confusion. But inwardly, she was smiling as the pink-haired man died in front of her. This was his punishment for threatening her kid after all. The masked killer withdrew the blade from the council member's throat, then turned his attention towards her. He cackled slightly as he lunged at her with his katana at the ready. He stabbed her in the gut only to hit nothing but air. He had attacked an after-image. He looked around frantically for her and felt something pierce through the side of his skull. My thanks for your services, Assassin-san. They are no longer required now. She spoke and extended one of her claw-like nails into his skull. Then she stirred her nail around inside his skull, essentially eviscerating his brain to prevent the Yamanakas from scanning his memories. Now everything was in place. She just needed to call the authorities and play the victim that managed to kill the assassin in self-defense. Then, they would trace everything back to where she intends it to be, Mabuki Haruno. She would be the scapegoat unless she agreed to some conditions. But that would have to be for later. A mother's work is never done. She whispered to herself, then began screaming hysterically for help, alerting the remaining staff. The next morning, Naruto woke up and yawned tiredly. He and Anko partied hard last night. They did everything from karaoke, dancing, some contest involving kissing, which according to Anko didn't count as a dirty game, much to his amusement. He sincerely hoped that she would be his sensei in the future. He sniffed the air and smelled food. But it didn't smell like Kurama's usual cooking. He got up and found Anko in the kitchen cooking up some eggs and bacon morning gaki. Figured I'd cook up some breakfast for you. She spoke with a cheery tone of voice. Heh. You my waifu or something? He asked in amusement and sat at the table, waiting patiently for the meal. A knock came from the door, prompting the kunoichi to ask her charge to answer it. He nodded and opened the door. He found it a little odd though. It couldn't be his mother since she had a key. Who would be knocking this early in the morning? He opened it, revealing the form of a purple-haired umbu wearing a Nico mask. She knelt down to meet him at eye level and spoke in a professional, while at the same time gentle voice, Naruto, your mother was attacked last night. She is unharmed but is now being questioned about the incident. She should be home in a few hours, so don't worry. Attacked? By who? Why? He asked in shock. He knew that Kurama was more than capable of handling herself, but it was still surprising nevertheless. Not sure yet. The attacker was a freelance assassin. Right now, we're still trying to figure out who might have hired him. We'll figure out the rest from there. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call me. Anko-san? I know you're in there. I shall entrust his care to you. Goodbye for now. The umbu spoke out, then vanished in a swirl of leaves. From the kitchen, Anko appeared with a look of concern on her face as she asked him, You okay, Naruto? He nodded while replying back, Yeah. I'm fine. Really. Kurama-san can take care of herself. Besides, it's not like she can die anyway. That last line made a question mark appear over the snake user's head. But she shrugged it off and served breakfast. Naruto, however, had a content smile on his face, having faith that Kurama would take care of him no matter what. She would probably come back home with a spring in her step and make plans for his birthday. He knew for a fact she would rend the heavens themselves to keep her promise to him as his mother. End Chapter 1. Chapter 2. A/N. Wow. Pretty good reception. Hope you enjoy this chapter too. And so I managed to kill the assassin in self-defense. That's when it kicked in what had happened and I began to call for help. Kurama spoke to one Ibiki, who was currently writing down her statement. He was the one heading the investigation of the Kizashi murder. However, Ibiki was watching this woman with a critical eye, not because of her attractive form but because he had a suspicious feeling about her. From what little information they had on her, aside from some adoption papers for one Naruto Uzumaki, a job at the Tanuki Club, and her most recent exposé on the academy, she was practically a ghost. It was almost like she just stepped into existence. People like that always have something to hide. Especially if they're written into someone's will within the same day as that someone ends up dead. What was your relationship with the victim? The TNI expert asked in a professional manner, though he kept a close eye on her for any signs of lying. He was a regular client of mine. Most unfortunately, he became obsessed with me. She answered him in a solemn tone. The Jonin, however, still had a feeling that she was more involved than what she was saying. He didn't like it when people held something back. He was about to question her further, but an umbu came in and whispered something into his ear. His eyes widened slightly from the news. While going through the assassin's belongings, a note had been found, promising the payment of 100,000 ryo for the killing of both Kizashi and his mistress. The meeting place for when the job was done was by the memorial stone at Training Ground 7. If they hurried, then they might catch whoever hired the assassin. While he was hesitant to let this Kurama woman go, he had no real reason to detain her further at this time. Something just came up. You may go now, he announced in a gruff manner. The kitsune slowly rose from her seat and thanked Ibiki for his service before walking out. All the while Ibiki was hating that smugness of hers. He felt like she was taunting him, and he knew it. But for now he would have to swallow his pride and continue with the investigation until more evidence appeared. Minutes later. Let's see. Naruto-kun's birthday is only a few days away. I need to find him a cute pet or two. And a sister, would he prefer younger or older? He didn't specify. Kurama muttered to herself in slight dismay. But she wouldn't even think of giving up before she even started. Because now was a perfect opportunity to show her kid what a good mother she was. She thought on how she was going to acquire a sister for him. She couldn't just go to an orphanage and pick some random girl. She needed to get something special and unique for him, just like his pets. She would also need to bake a cake as well. No birthday would be complete without cake. If she couldn't decide on a flavor for him, then she would make a 3-layered Neapolitan. Strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate. That could work out rather nicely. She arrived at her apartment and opened the door, She was pleased to see both Naruto and Enko cleaned up after themselves since she half expected the place to look like a hurricane had torn through. She noticed a piece of paper stuck to the refrigerator by a magnet. Reading it over, she learned that Naruto and Enko had taken off towards the academy because the students were all called there and Enko herself was going to handle correctional classes to see just how the other students' education suffered. In addition, the Hokage himself would announce what would be done about the academy. This was fine with the kitsune. It did in fact give her more time to plan out her kid's birthday in secret. Might as well start with the cake and work her way up. The kitsune went through both the pantry and refrigerator for the necessary ingredients. After checking and double-checking to make sure she had what was needed, she snapped her fingers and realized she was missing the frosting needed to later coat the cake. This meant she would have to run to the store and buy some before she could even get started. No matter, this might also provide an opportunity to do some window shopping for her kid's present. After replacing all the ingredients in their appropriate places, she exited her apartment to run her errands. Meanwhile, Training Ground 7. Ibiki and the Eternal Chunin made their way towards the meeting site where the assassin was meant to meet his employer. To be honest, the TNI expert thought this might be a waste of time. It was highly unlikely they'd find anything, but standard protocol demanded them to be thorough. And who knows? Sometimes they get lucky and their quarry makes a stupid mistake. What's that you're staring at, Marino-san? You have been looking at that file like you want to burn a hole into it. Kotetsu commented while rubbing the back of his head. They didn't usually involve themselves with something like this, but he and his partner needed a break from being gate guards. The autopsy reports. Kizashi's was pretty straightforward. He was stabbed from behind and killed in seconds. No time to defend himself, and he never saw it coming. Guess that's what happens when you slack off and get lazy with the civilians. The assassin's autopsy is what concerns me. He was identified as some freelance assassin with ties to the Yakuza. But his cause of death was being pierced through to his brain, then it was eviscerated like coleslaw. The Jonin explained with a hardened expression on his face. What's your point? Izumo asked out of curiosity, wanting to know what the infamous interrogator found so baffling. The Scar Jonin snapped the file closed and began to explain. It's not very well known, but since you're assisting me and it might be relevant to the case, I'll tell you. If the brain is intact, the Yamanakas can read the mind of the deceased. The assassin's brain was scrambled beyond hope for such a technique to be used. I think Kurama did this deliberately to erase the memories and evidence inside of the assassin's mind. The two Chunin looked at each other for a moment, then shrugged, and Kotetsu spoke up. You sure about that? Maybe he put up a struggle and ended up scrambling his own brain? I mean, you just said it's not well known. How would she know to do that, especially since she isn't a kunoichi? Who said she wasn't a kunoichi? She might be a foreigner from someplace. Could possibly be a spy or sleeper agent. The Jonin mused, making the two Chunin wonder if Ibiki had been getting enough sleep lately. Or maybe could Ibiki be attracted to this Kurama woman? She was by far one of the most gorgeous women they had seen, and she was so sultry yet refined. At last they arrived at the training ground, and so far, everything seemed normal except one thing. Along the tree line, short distance from the memorial stone, it appeared that someone had been digging a small hole in the ground. Finding this suspicious, Ibiki and the Eternal Chunin dug it up and found a duffel bag filled with cash. Lots of it. No doubt this was meant to be the assassin's pay. Pretty sloppy, leaving it like this. Whoever did this wasn't exactly a pro. On closer inspection, it seemed that there was a name stitched into the bag. Ibiki rubbed the dirt away and found Kizashi Haruno's name stitched onto the duffel bag. Okay. That's a tad weird. I don't think Kizashi-san arranged for his own murder. Izumo commented while scratching the back of his head. Ibiki silently agreed, but then cursed himself for his own stupidity. As a professional, he is supposed to look at all the possibilities. While he kept thinking about Kurama's involvement, he overlooked the most obvious suspect, Mabuki Haruno. The wife that was cheated out of her marriage and her husband's will. It was probable she intended to kill both Kizashi and Kurama as revenge, but the latter killed the assassin. He still had a feeling there was a little more to it, but the evidence was pointing to the Haruno household. It was also possible that someone stole this particular bag to throw off the investigation, but for now it was their only legitimate lead. Come on. Let's go make a house call. The Jonin spoke as he picked up the bag full of cash and began to march towards the Haruno's home. Elsewhere with Kurama. All right. That takes care of the frosting. I'd better get home soon. Naruto-kun will be back in a few hours and I want to have this cake prepped and ready before then. I'll look for a present later. Kurama mused to herself under her breath as she walked back to her apartment. Along the way, she noticed a caravan was close by to the local market. Now, why was a caravan so deep inside the village? What precious cargo could they be so closely guarding? She smelled sweat coming off of female bodies. Her ears twitched as she heard the sobs coming from the women. Seems like some slave trade was going on underneath the Hokage's nose. I think I'll ruin someone's day, and do a good deed in the process. She whispered to herself and approached the large cage that was covered by a thick tarp. "Step away from there!" yelled a man who came from around the corner of covered cage, followed by a second one. Obviously being guards hired to keep the merchandise from being stolen. Fortunately, Kurama knew precisely how to handle this situation. "My apologies for alarming you, guard-san. I am a doctor. Didn't your boss send you a notice that I was coming to inspect your goods?" she asked with a sultry smile, while running a hand through her crimson hair, making the guards blush slightly. No, we didn't get any notification, but we shouldn't let you in there without checking." One of the guards spoke in a shaky tone as found himself enraptured by her unnatural beauty. Now, wouldn't your boss be upset if he found out you were delaying me from doing my job? He cannot make much of a profit from sick goods, and he won't be making any off of dead ones. So step aside, would you kindly? She spoke in a more grave manner, making the two guards sweat nervously. "That's true. But we need to make sure you don't have any lockpicks or anything like that." One of the guards spoke out, causing Kurama to smirk. She placed her bag of goodies on the ground and sensually pulled aside a part of her kimono. "But of course, guard-san. You wouldn't want to mistake me for an officer of the law, yes? Is this hands-on? Or a strip search? Since I am a woman, there are other places I can hide such tools. You'd best be thorough." She spoke in a teasing tone and pulled aside the lower part of her kimono, exposing her slender legs, which made the two guards' noses explode into a geyser of blood. That won't be necessary. Just head on in." One of the guards spoke, since this woman was proving to be more woman than they could possibly handle. And they didn't want to die of blood loss just yet. "My thanks, gentlemen. This shouldn't take terribly long," she replied before readjusting her kimono back into place, then entered inside the slave pen. Inside were numerous females, all chained up, their bodies covered in filth. Their hair was greasy and looked like it hadn't been washed or groomed in weeks. Many of them had cuts and bruises along with whip marks on their bodies. "Afternoon, ladies. I shall be your friendly neighborhood helper." With that said, she snapped her fingers, causing their chains to snap apart, giving them the opportunity to escape and flee for their lives. "Huh! What was that noise?" one of the guards asked as he entered inside, only to be pierced in the head by one of Kurama's claws. TSK. So gullible. So very gullible. Humans like you are just trash." She spoke in a malicious manner before sending a bit of her yokai into his brain, which caused his head to explode like a water balloon filled with tomato soup. His partner entered in close behind and wet himself at the sight. "Boo!" was all the kitsune said, which made the remaining guard's heart leap inside of his chest before she sliced his throat open with her claws. Upon seeing the guards dead, the various slaves immediately made a break for it to alert the authorities on the identity of their captor, and hopefully return home. One, however, remained behind. "Era? Not in any rush, I see. You look much healthier than the others. You also have some rather lean muscle on you despite your rather curvaceous frame. A kunoichi, perhaps?" Kurama asked when she saw the much healthier state of this woman compared to the others. "Correct. My name is Samui ni Tokubetsu Jonin from Kumo. I thank you for your assistance. I was only captured a few days ago on a solo mission gone wrong. Apparently the client in question was a merchant who has connections to certain business partners here in Konoha. He drugged me and planned on selling me into slavery here in Konoha to ignite a diplomatic incident and possibly start a Cold War where he and his partners would profit from weapons sales and the like. It isn't cool of me to ask, but you seem trustworthy enough. Could you hide me so I can send a letter to the Reikage and explain the situation?" the blonde woman asked after her explanation. I am not so sure. Freeing slaves to ruin a slave trader's day is one thing, but engaging in political schemes that could start entire wars? My dear girl, my generosity has limitations. I bid you good luck all the same. I am sure a young woman like you shall make do," the kitsune replied in an even tone as she turned to leave. "If it is a reward you seek, then the Reikage would pay you quite handsomely. I am a student of his younger brother Killer B." Samui spoke as she placed a hand on the red-haired woman's shoulder to prevent her from leaving. "Era? So you're close with your Reikage? And Killer B, the Hachibi Jinchuriki, yes?" the kitsune asked, since the Kumo kunoichi caught her attention, and now Kurama was sensing another opportunity for her benefit. "Yes. He is like an uncle to me. And yes, that is my sensei." "How did you know about that, though?" Samui asked out of curiosity, since she wondered how this woman knew her sensei was a Jinchuriki. "Interesting. To answer your question, let me sum it up and say that I have both a connection and vested interest in the bijou. Now then, if it is a reward you are offering, then allow me to tell you ahead of time that I am not interested in money. I can acquire as much as I want on my own terms. But would you be interested in helping fulfill a little boy's wish?" the kitsune asked at the end with a large smile on her face. "I am sure we can negotiate a fair deal to benefit both of us. Shall we make arrangements on the way to your home?" Samui asked in a professional manner. She actually kind of liked this woman. She wasn't unkind, but neither was she an imbecile that would throw away an opportunity for some form of compensation. Of course. Call me Kurama Kitsune. The QB introduced herself as they proceeded to her apartment, and in the meantime negotiate a proper reward. At the academy. And so, in light of both Irika and Mizuki's crimes in rigging the classes so unfairly, they have both been relieved of duty and their headbands have been taken away indefinitely. To determine the extent of how far behind you are in class, we shall conduct some correctional classes. If we deem that you are successful enough in your correctional classes, then we will not extend your time in the academy by another 6 months. Enko Mitarashi shall be conducting the classes to establish discipline and ensure you are learning without needless distraction. That will be all. The Hokage announced to the various academy students before leaving and giving the kunoichi a nod. Some grumbled in dismay while others whispered amongst themselves about the former Chunin's fates. Naruto, however, relished at the chance for some fair treatment, courtesy of Enko. While she had a soft spot for him, she wouldn't play favorites for anyone, even him. Which was perfectly fine. Once Enko was good and ready, she started passing around some exam sheets for the students to work on. This time, it was assured that every single one was the same. The students began scribbling away at their papers, Naruto included, who had a deep smile of confidence on his face. He turned and noticed Sasuke was furiously scribbling at his paper and occasionally scratching his head. Had the Uchiha been relying so much on his rigged exams and tests that he neglected to actually study? Shrugging his shoulders, he continued to focus on his own exam. He couldn't help but notice that Enko was giving him looks of encouragement, and occasionally a smile as she walked about the students' desks to ensure none of them were cheating or slipping notes to one another. Sasuke, however, took notice of the looks that the dead last was receiving from the purple-haired jonin. Woman. You are actually helping the dobe, aren't you? The self-proclaimed avenger asked as he gripped his pencil. The Tokubetsu jonin raised an eyebrow as she slowly turned around. A look of annoyance on her face as she replied, Hey. I might have a real big soft spot for Naruto-kun, but I'm actually doing anything to help him, much less let him cheat. His exam paper is the same as everyone else's. Don't believe me? Then you can go ahead and take a look. Now either shut up and get back to work, or go wait outside. The Uchiha didn't take that well at all. His pencil snapped under the pressure of his grip. When both Irika and Mizuki were in charge, their help was quite welcome, since it would have gotten him out of the academy faster, and into the hands of a jonin sensei who could start teaching him jutsu to kill Itachi. The self-proclaimed avenger pointed at Naruto and yelled, This is all your fault, dobe. If it wasn't for your bitch of a mother, then I would have graduated by now instead of slumming it here with you losers. Naruto slammed his hands against his desk and abruptly rose from his seat, nearly knocking it over. The blonde had fire in his eyes and he felt a very powerful urge to hit the Uchiha for insulting Kurama, but then he took in a deep breath and sighed. He continued glaring at the avenger but spoke in a measured tone, You know what, Sasuke? Take your balls out of your purse and grow the fuck up. You're not that special. The entire class was stunned by what Naruto said. They half expected him to hit the Uchiha or have a childish outburst. Enko, however, knew that Naruto was finally standing up for himself, and at the same time, proved that he was the bigger man. What? Was Sasuke's only reply. He too was unable to comprehend what the whiskered teen said. All of a sudden the Uchiha felt like he was shrinking underneath everyone's gaze. You heard me. You're not all that special. Wah wah wah. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I am a brooding emo-gary stew bitch boy who lost his family and clan. So now I'm gonna get all broody and have a tantrum whenever I don't get my way. Sasuke, get over yourself and grow up. Yes, you lost your clan. Yes, you lost your family. Yes, they deserve justice for what happened. But you don't have to be to everybody about it. And you don't have to isolate yourself from everyone. You want to be successful in your self-imposed mission to avenge them? Take some goddamn responsibility for your life and try actually making something of yourself. But you won't do that. You're gonna take whatever comes easiest to you. You want power, right? Here's a tip. Anyone that relies on power that isn't their own is a coward and a weakling. Sasuke, you're the real loser here. And you always blame others for your own failures and incompetence. You're just pathetic. When Naruto finished his rant, he slumped into his and sighed. His face flushed from anger and from using up a large amount of oxygen in his rant. A clapping sound suddenly came from the back of the class, revealing it to be Hinata, who was applauding her crush for putting the Uchiha in his place. She was then joined by Shino, Kiba, Shikamaru and Shuji until the entire classroom got on their feet and gave Naruto a standing ovation. Even Sasuke's fangirls were moved by Naruto's words and joined in. The whiskered teen blushed at the praise and adjusted his collar. He didn't feel all that special right now. He just said what he felt since he couldn't stand Sasuke's attitude anymore. The Uchiha felt a burning anger well up in his chest. The dobe's words touching and poking at every single soft spot in his ego. Then, like any other self-destructive Uchiha who was controlled by either impulse or greed, he resorted to violence. He grabbed his chair and threw it at the blonde, which sailed through the air, resulting in one of the chair legs hitting the whiskered teen on the head. Many of the students gasped in shock. Most didn't fully register what had happened until Sakura screamed out, who was sitting next to Naruto at the time, and managed to catch him as he fell to the floor. Anko, however, roared in anger and jumped on Sasuke, immediately pummeling him with her fist. Again and again she punched the Avenger until his face turned black and blue, and a number of his teeth had either loosed in his mouth or popped out entirely. Hot tears welled up in her eyes since she couldn't stand the thought of Naruto getting hurt or worse. If anything ever happened to him, she would punish the perpetrator tenfold. Ankeo-sensei. Naruto is bleeding. Sakura screamed as she cradled Naruto's head in her lap. Both Ino and Hinata were sitting next to the injured blonde. The Hyuga ripped off her jacket and used it to apply pressure and stop the bleeding from his head. Is he breathing? I can't tell if his neck is broken. Ino yelled as she tried to check if Naruto's neck was broken or not. The snake user growled out and yelled in a commanding tone, "Somebody get a goddamn doctor." Her yell prompting several students to rush out to fulfill the Jonin's order. Anko looked down at the Uchiha who was fading in and out of consciousness and growled out, "Come hell or high water, even if I have to become a missing nin, I will see you pay for this." Meanwhile, Kurama and Naruto's apartment. Wait. Let me get this straight one more time. You want me to be your adopted son's big sister? Asked Samui as she was busy writing a letter to her Reikage to explain her current situation and the truth behind her disappearance. In the kitchen, Kurama had just finished baking the first layer of her child's cake and was in the process of covering it with strawberry-flavored frosting. Precisely, my dear Samui. Even though my son wouldn't admit it out loud, he craves love, attention, and affection. Hence his desire for a sister. And I do so believe you can give him that. Especially given the fact you understand Jinchurikis. You must have an idea on how lonely he was before he met me. The kitsune explained as she licked up some of the pink frosting on her fingers in a sensual manner. Yeah, I do. It wouldn't be cool of me to make false promises or give false hope, so I'll think on it. Changing villages and such things is a big commitment, after all. The blonde woman spoke as she continued writing out her letter, her passive face showing that she was thinking deeply on the matter. But of course, it wouldn't be fair of me to force you. I imagine you have friends and family in Kumo. A young and beautiful lady such as yourself must also have a significant other, yes? The kitsune asked at the end with a small smile. No. There's no one. Never had a boyfriend or girlfriend. Mainly because anyone interested in me was only interested in my body. Samui replied bluntly, not bothering to hide her disdain for such people. Oh? Is that so? The kitsune asked with a coy smile, immediately picturing Samui as that kind of sister for her precious kit. Suddenly the phone rang, prompting the red-haired woman to pick it up and answer it. Hello? Anko-chan? Whatever is the matter? Slow down, I can't understand you. My Sochi-kun? What happened? With the pink-eyed kitsune fell silent at the end, then a dark aura surrounded her as the entire apartment shook as though an earthquake were taking place. Cracks appeared in the walls with a harsh crackling and groaning noise. Windows exploded into tiny shards of glass. Samui swallowed hard, a thick bead of sweat rolling down her forehead at the sight. She knew this woman was far from ordinary, but now she believed that she was a force of nature. The kitsune hanged the phone and turned around slowly, revealing Descara in her eyes was all black and her iris were a deep blood-red crimson. Samui-san? Would you be so kind as to accompany me to the hospital? I fear I might slaughter someone if left to my own devices. The kitsune asked while her hair became more ragged and feral and her whisker marks becoming more pronounced. Yes. The letter to the Reikage can wait for now. The kunoichi answered, knowing that it wouldn't be wise to allow Kurama to go alone in her enraged state. She caught a few snippets of the conversation on the phone. Had something happened to Kurama's son? Without a word further, the two exited the apartment and Samui followed after her savior. Being an experienced kunoichi, she could tell from Kurama's posture and body language that the red-haired woman was ready to murder someone at the slightest provocation. Fortunately, most everyone they passed by sensed the murderous intent and gave Kurama a very wide berth, fearing that she might disembowel them for even talking to her. A number of people even went as far as to drop to their knees and bow before Kurama in hopes of appeasing her, knowing her reputation at the Tanuki Club. Once, a client tried to force himself on her. Suffice it to say, he is now better off living as a woman after she was finished with him. Pick up the pace, Samui-san. I won't stop for you if you fall behind. Kurama spoke in a harsh manner as she walked at a rapid pace, her clawed hands clenching and unclenching as she tried to control her more bestial side. The blonde kunoichi found herself jogging up to the red-haired woman. It was even more evident she wasn't an ordinary civilian. Unknown to them, Kurama wasn't paying attention to where she was going due to her single-minded focus on reaching the hospital, and found herself bumping into something. Looking down, she saw it was a little girl with a now empty cone of ice cream, the treat having splattered on Kurama's kimono. Samui was prepared to stop the kitsune in case she became violent but was surprised to see her lean down and spoke Era. It seems I wasn't watching my step. What's your name, my dear? The girl turned neon red at the woman's dignified tone of voice and whispered Moegi. What a cute name. Here. Buy yourself a replacement. Kurama answered and placed some real coins into the girl's hand before snapping her clawed fingers and making the stain on her kimono vanish. With that done, she walked off, leaving Moegi stiff as a statue, her soul seemingly leaking out of her body after the exchange. Samui, however, couldn't help but think that Kurama was a very cool person. She was dignified and sultry at the same time, and even in her enraged state her maternal instincts were still quite obvious. She couldn't help but wonder how cool of a guy her son was. Minutes later, they arrived at the local hospital, and the receptionist's desk seemed to be empty at the time. Growing impatient, Kurama tapped on the bell for service, causing a shout of coming to emerge from another room. The door opened, and it was revealed to be a woman with glasses wearing a white lab coat, a messy pile of paper in her arms as she rushed towards the desk, only to slip and fall, which scattered the papers everywhere. Sighing at the woman's blunder, Kurama snapped her fingers, causing the papers to float over towards the desk and reassemble themselves into a neat stack. Besides, this might help speed things along for them all. Thanks. Sorry, I'm a bit unorganized. I am Shiho of the Cryptanalyst Division. But work's been kinda slow there, so I'm working here part-time. Boom. Well, she was cut off by Kurama, whose face was mere inches from Shiho's face. Oh my. Your glasses are a mess. Allow me to clear them up. The caramel-skinned woman spoke as she took the analyst's glasses. Shiho tried to reach for them to get them back, but a finger to her lips shut her down as a slow shoo came from Kurama. Now. No need to fuss, my dear. Perhaps you might be of assistance to me in turn? The kitsune asked as she sensually licked at the lenses, making the analyst blush neon red, her tongue unable to form a coherent response. Kurama then flicked her wrist, making a handkerchief appear as she cleaned off her saliva from the glasses. Once they were clean, they seemingly sparkled as Kurama replaced them back on Shiho's face with a sly smile. You will? Excellent. What might the room number for 1 Naruto Uzumaki be? She asked as she tapped the analyst on the nose. Feeling like her brain might cook inside of her skull, Shiho dumbly pulled out a clipboard from the desk, showing both Naruto and Sasuke's arrival in rooms 527 and 528 respectively. My thanks for the assistance. Have a good day, my dear. Kurama spoke in a grateful tone before heading for the elevator, leaving the spectacled woman behind with a look of ecstasy on her face as she slumped in her chair. Samui raised an eyebrow and commented, You have been surprisingly cool since we left. Did you really need me to keep your temper in check? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Couldn't be too careful. Kurama replied in a casual manner, since she preferred to be prepared for anything. At last they arrived at the appropriate room and entered inside, where both Anko and the Sandaime were sitting near Naruto's bed. Upon noticing the red-haired woman's arrival, the snake user dived down to her knees with her head touching the floor as she bowed. She sniffled and cried out, I am so sorry. It's my fault, Naruto-kun was hurt. I accept full responsibility for this. The red-haired woman said nothing for a few moments, until she knelt down and touched Anko on the shoulder and whispered gently to her, I don't hold you at fault. You may get up now. The kunoichi nodded as she slowly got up from the floor, her eyes reddened and somewhat puffy from crying. Kurama then approached Naruto's bed and asked while looking down at her kit. How bad? She asked since her kit's head was carefully wrapped in bandages, her clawed hand carefully stroking the boy's arm. Good news is the doctors say he'll recover in a few weeks. Bad news is that he also has a concussion and he won't be able to make it by graduation day. Other arrangements shall be made to give Naruto-kun a fair chance given these circumstances. The Hokage explained briefly. He too was upset by this incident. Kurama, however, growled deeply in her throat. While she could heal the head injury without any problem, the concussion was another matter entirely. She didn't know the full extent of that part. For now it would be best to allow nature to take its course. I see. Hokage-sama, I am officially pressing charges against Sasuke Uchiha for attempted murder. She spoke as her hair took on a more ragged and feral appearance. Murder? That's a bit much, isn't he? Was cut off by a heated glare from Kurama which seemingly sucked a few years out of his remaining lifespan, his voice dying in his throat at the sight of the angered mother. Sasuke threw a chair at my son. I would say that more than qualifies as attempted murder. Now convene a trial immediately. I wish to have this matter resolved as soon as possible. I refuse to let this go unpunished. I swear to you, Hokage-san, come hell or high water, even if the heavens blacken and collapse, I will get my justice. She spoke at the end with finality, clearly not going to let this go without some form of reparation. Nodding at her demand, the Sandaime departed to get the councils together so that a trial could be held. The kitsune stared down at her precious kit, tears welling up in her eyes as she forgot both Anko and Samui's presence, and suddenly began to sing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away." When she finished singing, she leaned down and kisses her kid's cheek. Ever since he had become her child, she developed new and powerful feelings that she could never have felt while stewing in her hatred of humans taking advantage of her and her siblings. She felt a love stronger than even with the recruiter Sanin, whom she was viewed as a father figure. If it weren't for the upcoming case, she wouldn't dare leave Naruto's side. But she wanted to strike before someone in favor of the Uchiha could twist and distort the facts. "Kurama-san, I will stay and look after your son if you like," Samui offered, since she owed the kitsune a lot, and she felt like it wouldn't be right to leave the boy alone like this. "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" Enko asked with a heated glare, now taking notice of the blonde woman who had remained silent until this point. "She is Samui. Don't worry. I shall entrust my kit to her for the moment. Enko-san, you're a witness and must come with me for now. There's much to do yet, and I won't rest until I see justice done." Kurama spoke while clenching her fists. When she turned the two kunoichi, didn't see the face of a woman who was distraught. Her face was so hard it seemed like it had become iron, and her eyes seemed to be rubies glittering in a wildfire. Her crying and grieving was finished. Now, she was on a mission, and they had no choice but to comply with her. Kurama gave her kit one final kiss goodbye and departed with Enko, leaving Samui to look after her fellow blonde. She sat by his side and couldn't help but wonder how much he truly suffered as a Jinchuriki. She felt a certain feeling. Was it worry? Was some concern? She couldn't tell right now. But she did know that she had to consider the wish he made for a sister much more seriously. Hours later. Council chambers. "Court is now in session," announced Hiruzen as he banged a gavel to silence the civilian and shinobi councils. Both sides wondering why they had been so abruptly summoned. But all had a feeling it had to do with the recent incident between Naruto and Sasuke, since news had spread around at a surprisingly high speed after the two had been admitted to the hospital. This case is in regards to both Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha, as you may have guessed. Sasuke is being charged with assault and attempted murder. Since neither Naruto nor Sasuke are currently present, Kurama Kitsune has agreed to represent the plaintiff while my old teammate Hamura shall represent the defendant. Is this agreeable? The Sandame asked at the end, which earned only the silent consent of the councils. Nodding in satisfaction, he motioned for Kurama to make her opening statement. She nodded and rose from her seat, now dressed in a dapper burgundy-colored business suit, and wearing reading glasses to more fit the lawyer role she was currently assuming. Clearing her throat, she began to speak. "I will not dilly-dally or waste your time with flowery words. Some of you are parents just like myself, and you would do anything to protect them. Now then, the facts of the case are as follows. During the course of correctional classes headed by Anko Mitarashi, an altercation began between the two boys, resulting in Naruto telling off Sasuke due to the Uchiha's general attitude. Sasuke then snapped angrily and threw a chair, quite grievously injuring my child, and could have possibly done much worse. As many of you are aware, Sasuke Uchiha still has many scars from the infamous massacre of his clan and family by the hands of his elder brother Itachi. However, he hadn't gotten proper treatment for the trauma, and has deliberately ostracized himself from everyone around him. According to the general testimony of his class, Sasuke is often described as rude, arrogant, entitled, and oft-times downright mean and insensitive. It is both my personal and professional belief that Sasuke Uchiha should never have been admitted into the Konoha Academy without the proper treatment, which made him a ticking time bomb. And now, because of his own ego and impulsiveness, he has deliberately harmed a fellow student. I demand that full reparations be made to both myself and my son, and that Sasuke immediately dropped from the shinobi program entirely, and that his chakra should be permanently sealed. When she had finished her statement, the civilian council was in an uproar, all babbling their own opinions about the case. Kurama couldn't help but think of them as nothing more than monkeys, slinging their feces around while having a tantrum. Kizashi being their head kept them in line. Now that he was dead, they were now sheep without a shepherd. The kitsune then thought that she'd best give them one, lest they defecate one out. Hamura then cleared his throat and began to speak. "Thank you for expressing your opinions on the matter, council members. Once I have finished my opening statement regarding Sasuke of the Uchiha clan, the elder was cut off by the sharp snap of Kurama's clawy fingers. Excuse me, you just said of the Uchiha clan you recognize Sasuke as a member of an active Konoha shinobi clan, yes? Then this case is of shinobi concern. While the civilians are allowed to express their opinions, any votes they might cast in this trial is null and void. As stated by Konoha Shinobi Law 129, Article 7, Paragraphs 3. Kurama spoke, surprising everyone with her knowledge of Konoha's laws. She had to thank Mito, since being inside the Shodame's wife did hold a few advantages, such as an intricate knowledge of Konoha's laws. Though admittedly she didn't ever believe she'd put this knowledge into practice. You aren't wrong about that, Kurama-san. But your son is an academy student, ergo he is a civilian. Therefore the civilian council is the elder tried to speak but was cut off again by Kurama snapping her fingers. A shinobi academy student, which again, falls under shinobi jurisdiction. Konoha Law 76, Article 1, Paragraph 4. Spoke the kitsune in a tone of irritation. She was not going to give her opposition any room to maneuver, nor would she let them have a voice since they were evidently biased. Hiruzen banged his gavel before the civilians could protest and announced Kurama-san is correct on all counts. This does indeed count as a shinobi case and falls under such jurisdiction. If the civilian council refuses to acknowledge this, then I shall have all civilian council members immediately ejected from the chambers. With their protests silenced, they were glaring hard at Hamura, demanding that he do something about this. The elder coughed and spoke. Let's not forget that Naruto wasn't the only one injured. Anko Midarashi, the teacher at the time, beat Sasuke within an inch of his life. Doctors state that when he wakes up, he may have difficulty eating solid foods. The kitsune adjusted her glasses and spoke up. Objection. That is irrelevant towards this case. Anko was merely performing her duty in protecting one of her charges. If she overstepped her boundaries on what was or wasn't acceptable force, then Hokage-sama shall handle her in a separate trial. Indeed, Hamura. That is a separate matter. Now let's get back on topic. Kurama-san, do you have any witnesses? The Sandaime asked, though he had a feeling that conjuring up witnesses wouldn't be much trouble for her at all. I do indeed. Anko Midarashi herself, along with a number of fellow students of both Naruto and Sasuke. The kitsune answered with a confident smile. Said witnesses were immediately brought in to give their testimonies in their own words. One by one, they recounted the incident, in detail, all having laid witness to the event. Having heard enough and finding Sasuke's defense to be sorely lacking, the Hokage called for the Shinobi Council to cast their votes. They all voted quite unanimously that Sasuke was guilty of all charges and that Kurama's recommended punishment was suitable. If Sasuke were to lash put again or seek revenge, then he'd be stripped of his inheritance, and the Uchiha compound along with all its valuables. And just like that, the trial was over. Kurama was obviously delighted that she had dogged a descendant of the Uchiha clan and gotten payback for her son. But she still had a long road ahead. Now there was the matter of acquiring a shepherdess to keep the civilians in check. She smiled to herself and approached Hiruzen, who was about to head up to his office. A word, if I may, Hokage-sama? Has any progress been made in whomever hired that assassin? She asked in a professional manner. I don't see the harm since you're already involved. Ibiki has recently reported that it seems Mabuki Haruno may yet be involved. After finding some new evidence, he checked the Haruno household and found that the safe had been emptied of 100,000 ryo. He is now interrogating Mabuki-san as we speak. The Hokage answered, not feeling the need to withhold such information from Naruto's mother. I see. Hokage-sama? With your blessing, I would very much like to ask if I may have a little chat with Mabuki-san? No doubt Ibiki is using his usual barbaric methods on her, but my presence might surprise her and make her slip up or reveal something she didn't know she knew. Kurama requested with a smile which hid her true intentions. Hiruzen thought it was exceptionally odd that she would want to speak with Mabuki. But she did have a point, it wouldn't really hurt for them just to talk, right? Very well. I shall make sure you get proper clearance. In the meantime, I suggest you go check on Naruto-kun. She nodded in agreement, and immediately departed for the hospital. On the way, she changed back into her usual attire and Geta sandals. She inwardly sighed for missing work at the Tanuki Club, but fortunately Madame Nuki was a very understanding individual, although the kitsune's clientele might not be so understanding. But that wasn't truly important. Naruto was perhaps one of the few humans she felt any genuine feelings towards. Her musing was broken as her nose caught the scent of a female following her. Her ears twitched as she heard the sounds of bare feet slapping against the ground as her mystery stalker followed her. Smiling to herself, she would allow this individual to continue following her to ascertain her true intentions. The kitsune hummed slightly to herself, believing that it might be prudent to hire a samurai to protect her child. As evidenced by what recently happened, she couldn't protect Naruto 24/7. But samurai typically only made contracts with nobility and daimyos. But fortunately she had one or two tricks up her sleeve to correct that. Her nose twitched again, catching the scent of blood, venom, and serpents. Turning her head slightly, she saw a pale girl hiding in the shadows, her yellow serpentine eyes staring at the kitsune. The mysterious girl then vanished into the shadows, leaving a pleasantly curious kitsune she might have found a suitable pet for her child. Elsewhere. Hello? Anyone out here? Hello? Yelled Naruto into a seemingly never-ending expanse of white. This place seemed to be a part of his mindscape, but there was nothing here. It was all a blank slate. He wondered if this might be his subconscious mind or something of the like. He sighed and cursed Sasuke for putting him in this situation. It wasn't his fault the Uchiha couldn't handle the truth. Hey there. In a bit of a pickle, are we? Spoke a female voice behind him. At first he'd hoped it was his adoptive mother, but this voice sounded different. He turned around and was met with a gorgeous-looking woman who reminded him of Kurama. However, this one was paler, and seemed to have a more boisterous posture compared to Kurama's dignified yet sultry disposition. "Who the hell are you?" Naruto asked as he looked the woman up and down. He had to admit to himself that he wasn't overly picky when it came to women, but due in no small part of his interactions with Kurama and Enko, he developed a bit of a fetish for older women. "Checking me out, huh? Can't say I blame you. You have good taste. Anyways, allow me to properly introduce myself. My name is Kushina Uzumaki, and we've got a lot to talk about," spoke the now identified Kushina with a large grin which widened even further at the look of realization on Naruto's face. "Uzumaki? Then that means he fell silent at the end, as he put two and two together. That's right. I am your mother. And as I just said, we have a lot to talk about." She spoke in a more serious manner. She sat in the lotus position on the ground and gestured for the blonde to join her. He was absolutely brimming with questions, and he felt a certain turmoil in his heart. By this time, Kurama was the only mother he acknowledged, and he never asked her why she attacked Konoha or about his parents. Partially because he wasn't interested in the past, or maybe he was afraid to know. But now it seems that it was catching up to him. How was he supposed to handle this Kushina woman being his birth mother? Perhaps he might find the answer if he listened to her story. And Chapter 2. Chapter 3, The Ties That Bind. The two Uzumaki sat in an awkward silence as Kushina tried to find a way to start out her explanation. Naruto was twiddling his thumbs. He too wasn't sure what to say in a situation like this. He felt a certain trepidation in his heart. "You know, it's funny. I could have had all the answers if I only asked Kurama. But neither of us said anything because deep down we didn't want anything to change between us. We were both happy and comfortable with our roles as mother and son. And I guess if she told me about my past, we were afraid we might lose something, I guess." The blonde boy mused out loud. Kushina gave a warm and sympathetic smile to the boy she gave birth to and spoke, "Can't say I blame you. I suppose you both felt you didn't truly need the past. Why would you when you were genuinely happy? But still, there are some things you need to know. Let's start with our clan and village, then work our way up." And so she began the story of their clan, their village and its downfall, the truth behind the recruitment Sanin, and the real events of that fateful night Naruto was born. He sat there and absorbed all this information like a sponge, although certain pieces he had to swallow down hard like a bitter pill. "So you were killed during the Kyuubi attack, huh?" The blonde asked, more in the form of a statement. "Yes. I know that the sacred bond between mother and child never formed between us, but I want you to know I am sorry. For everything. For not being the mother you deserved, for not being there for your first words, your first steps, first everything. I am sorry that your first memories weren't happy ones. I understand if you are angry at me. If you never forgive for all that, then that's okay. You deserve to be angry." She spoke and bowed to him. Her head pressed hard against the floor in her shame. Naruto tried to think of a proper response, a mixture of emotions coursing through him. Then he smiled and spoke in a calm manner, "I am past angry. In fact, I don't even care any more about that. You died trying to protect me. There's no reason to be mad at you. It's true, I can't acknowledge you as a mother since Kurama has become the mom I never had, but I wouldn't mind if you became the super cool aunt or something like that." "Thank you?" she screamed out as she grabbed him and hugged him tight, his face buried in the valley of her breasts. He smiled a bit, glad that he was able to reconcile with Kushina. It felt genuinely good to bury that hatchet. But there was still the matter of Kurama. They'd need a little talk once he returned to the realm of the living. Elsewhere. Hokage Tower. "What do you mean Naruto has been adopted?" shouted the voice of Jiraiya, who rushed back to Konoha when he heard that the child of prophecy had been adopted by a mysterious woman named Kurama. He searched and searched with the use of his spy network for any knowledge of her, but she was like a ghost. She was an unknown variable that could alter Naruto's viewpoints, make him less malleable. "Just as I said, Kurama-san has adopted him. She is a truly delightful woman that loves him very much. If you're thinking of breaking them apart because of that whole prophecy business, then I will be happy to discuss your funeral arrangements." The Sandame spoke in a tone that was part joking and part serious. He knew for a fact that if his student tried taking the boy from Kurama, then she wouldn't just stop with a court trial like Sasuke. She would outright murder Jiraiya. Their meeting was interrupted by the sound of knocking. Hiruzen cleared his throat and called out for whoever was knocking to enter. When the door opened, it was revealed to be Kurama, dressed in a more elegant version of her black kimono, this one showing the picture of a fox standing on what appeared to be a bed of vines and thorns with some roses in full bloom. Her Geta sandals made small clacking sounds as she approached with a basket full of goods in her arm. Jiraiya immediately started drooling over this woman. If a gorgeous woman like this were to be put into his book series, or the Ika Ika film that was in the works, his sales would soar higher than the moon. He had to get her to sign a contract. He put on a smile and tried to act charming. Hello, Ms. I am Jiraiya Sanin, spy master and renowned author of Konoha. Might I interest you in a role for my movie? You have the makings of celebrity status. The kitsune gave a coy smile as she turned to him, her pink eyes staring into his for a few long moments, triggering an awkward silence from the Sanin. He tilted his head, wondering if she had heard him. She then asked him in a casual manner, I am sorry. Who are you again? You just said renowned author. Did you write that awful book series with the sparkling vampires and half-naked werewolves? At her question the Sandame struggled to maintain a straight face. He was inwardly laughing his ass off while Jiraiya seemed genuinely shocked and offended at her response. What? No. Vampires don't sparkle. And my works are the Ika Ika series. He yelled out in irritation. Ah. So you're in the porn industry then? She spoke with a more sinister smile. Making the Sanin blubber for a few moments about his books being art, she then giggled lightly and spoke in a full polite manner. Ah. Pardon my rudeness. Kurama Kitsune, at your service. At her introduction, the toad Sanin visibly flinched. You are Kurama? Naruto Uzumaki's adopted mother? He asked astonished. This woman was nothing like he had envisioned at all. She was just too perfect. Indeed I am. What of it? She asked in order to feign ignorance, already telling what direction this conversation would go. And if he threatened her child, then she would ensure that his body wouldn't be found ever. I am his godfather and rightful guardian, of course. I refuse to acknowledge you as his adoptive mother. He yelled while pointing an accusatory finger at her, as if he were judging her of some type of a crime. He then crossed his arms and continued to speak. Why you even adopted him in the first place I don't understand. And your point is? The kitsune asked with a yawn, visibly bored by the Sanin and his posturing as a worried godfather. Her question was answered when a fat wad of cash was placed in her hand. Both her and Hiruzen tilted their heads in confusion, wondering why the Sanin had handed over a large amount of money. You take that money, leave Konoha, and leave the boy to me. I'll see to it he grows up how he was meant to. The Sanin spoke in a tone of confidence. His smug look vanished as the kitsune stared at him with eyes full of white-hot fury, making him feel a sickening sensation that some years of his lifespan were being sucked out of him. What are Naruto's favorite movies? What kind of music does he like? What kind of girls does he like? What are his favorite treats? What is it he wants more than anything on Kami's green earth? She asked in a tone like ice. Her enraged aura seemed to be snuffing out all sources of light, and a deep rumbling echoed throughout the Hokage's office as cracks appeared in the walls and the windows started to form spiderweb cracks. The Sanin couldn't answer a single one of her questions and simply began babbling incoherently, her fearsome aura now putting the fear of Kami into him. You can't answer, can you? His favorite movies are the Princess Gale movies. His taste in music can't be defined by a single genre. If he likes it, then he likes it. He isn't picky with girls, but he has a thing for older women. His favorite foods are ramen, pizza, steaks cooked medium, and recently he has been dabbling in more spicy foods. And what he wants most is for people to shower him in love, affection, and attention, even if he won't admit it out loud. You claim to be his godfather? Is this a joke? Now you care about his well-being when there is someone like me in his life? I'll acknowledge that as a Sanin, it may be dangerous for you to raise him firsthand, but what stopped you from writing to him? From checking on him? From visiting him? From letting him know he had some form of family out there? You honestly think I'll trade away my child, the one person who has brought true joy to my life, for money? Jiraiya-san, you are not even a person to me. You are nothing but vermin. If you ever come near my child, I will kill you. And when all is said and done, no one shall mourn you. Few will even remember you. Your only real legacy will be a cheap and tasteless pornographic series that people will lose interest in. Mark my words, here and now, you will never speak to, or even look at my child. And to ensure we're clear. When she had finished her rant, the money in her hands burst into crimson flames. She tilted her hand, allowing the ashes to fall to the floor, making Jiraiya's jaw drop. She just burnt about 5 million ryo without even batting an eye. Her claw-like nails then extended, and he felt a sharp stabbing pain in his abdomen. Looking down, he saw one of her sharp claws had stabbed him clean through. He had no time to scream as she swiftly retracted her claw from out of his body, then sent a sharp jab to his jugular, cutting off his windpipe and ability to scream from the pain. She smiled in a sinister manner since she directed some of her bijou chakra into him. In a few days, the residual chakra in his body would target his prostate, and then begin eating away at it like a cancer. Oh, how delicious it would be when he would be forced to have it removed. Now that she was done with this waste of life, she had other matters to attend to. I am terribly sorry about the mess. This filth's blood is soiling your rather nice carpet. Should I reimburse you for it? She asked in an overly cheerful voice, making the Sandame sweat nervously since she was being so casual, almost like there was nothing even wrong with Jiraiya bleeding all over the place. Don't worry about the carpet. It is a cheap and worthless replica. And here is your clearance to see Mabuki. Just to inform you ahead of time, Inoichi has performed a mind-scanning operation for any evidence regarding Kizashi's murder. So far, nothing. I cannot see what you hope to gain. He spoke while sliding over a document to her. With a flick of her wrist, a handkerchief appeared in her hand, allowing her to wipe off the blood on her fingers while she answered, "Perhaps I can help. Perhaps I cannot. I might be able to jog her memory. Maybe remind her of something that was important but didn't seem like it to Inoichi-sama. Either way, I feel I owe her a visit since I, in a way, took her husband from her." With that, she discarded the handkerchief, letting it fall on the Sanin's face as she collected the necessary paperwork and left while maintaining an air of elegance. "That woman is something special," Hiruzen muttered before looking down at his student who was fading in and out of consciousness. The Sandaime sighed in an exasperated manner since Jiraiya had brought this on himself. He supposed now would be a decent time to call for medical assistance. Minutes later. Konoha Prison. Kurama sighed as she walked into the visitors' area for the prison. She had showed her clearance to the Chunin guard and was waiting for an inspection. Apparently Abiki was quite adamant about visitors being thoroughly checked both on paper and physically. Finally, she was invited to the inspection area where she saw a familiar face waiting for her. "As I live and breathe. If it isn't Asuma-san," spoke Kurama in a casual manner. The Jonin seemed initially surprised by her presence. A large blush formed on his face as he saw how regal and gorgeous she looked in her kimono. Her crimson orbs boring into him, and hearing her voice alone sent pleasurable chills up his spine. "Oh, Kurama-san. I wasn't told you were the one I was inspecting. I, tried to come see you again at the Tanuki Club, but the matron kept saying you were unavailable. Something about personal business and responsibilities," he greeted with a large blush. He was forced to hold his cigarette between his fingers to avoid sucking in too much smoke. He felt like his heart was being pounded against a drum while in the presence of this woman. I do apologize for my absence. I promised to make a special reservation. Just for you. When I return to work, of course," she promised with a sultry smile. What the Jonin didn't know that the kitsune was having a difficult time keeping a straight face since her nose was catching all manner of pungent odors coming from the door to the cell blocks. She slipped an unlit cigarette from his pocket and asked, "Mind if I have this? I need something to take the edge off." He only nodded in response as she placed the cigarette between her lips, then pressed it against his own cigarette, allowing it to light up. The gesture made him blush and feel some blood flow rush to his loins. When she pulled back, she took a deep drag from her cigarette and exhaled the smoke from her nostrils. Now she wouldn't need to worry about her overly sensitive nose giving her a migraine in the cell block. With that problem out of the way, she spoke in a teasing manner, "I believe an inspection is in order, yes? Is this hands-on? Or a strip search?" He blushed all the deeper. He blubbered something unintelligible, and then frisked her for anything suspicious like lockpicks or concealed weapons such as kunai or tantos. Once he finished inspecting her, he searched the basket of treats and snacks she had in her possession. With that done and over with, much to his relief, he unlocked the door to the female cell block and gave her instructions towards where they were keeping Mabuki Haruno. She thanked him for his help and walked down the cell block, avoiding the lecherous stares of the guards and female prisoners. If any of them got a little too grabby, then she would twist their wrists and rip off their hands. She stopped in front of one particular cell where a woman was performing push-ups instead of making lewd comments, or wolf whistling like the others. This woman finished, then stood up, allowing Kurama to take in her features. This woman has black hair and brown eyes and wears a gray and brown robe with fox pelt lining the collar. She also possesses tattoos resembling flames on either sides of her face around her eyes. And partially revealed on her chest was a brand that seemed like a fire emblem of some sort the kitsune recognized. Noticing that Kurama was staring at her, the woman asked bluntly, "Something you want?" "I am uninterested in women if you're thinking of renting me." If the kitsune was flustered by this woman's blunt statement, she certainly didn't show it since she kept a straight face as she replied, "No. I didn't come for you specifically, but I couldn't help but notice your brand. Tell me, are you from the mountain tribes far to the north?" "You know of my people then? That is quite rare. Most don't even know we exist anymore," spoke the prisoner as her fingers traced around her brand. "Indeed. Your kind are masters of all manner of flames. Tell me, have you found your dragon yet?" Kurama asked with a sly smile. She knew that long ago, during Konoha's founding, when Hashirama was gathering up clans to join his village, one clan in particular didn't trust his idealistic nature and chose to leave and not have anything to do with Konoha. A very proud clan of flame manipulators said to even have control over dragonfire. "You know far more of my clan than I gave you credit for. I had thought we faded from the pages of history, but it seems that's not entirely true. I am called Seiruka, and I haven't found my dragon as of yet. That is why I am traveling the nations, or at least I was until I was thrown in here." The now identified Sei answered while crossing her arms under her bust. Kurama Kitsune is my name. Why were you arrested, if I may ask? The Kitsune asked in a polite tone, since this woman had caught her attention. I was staying at a local hotel while in Konoha. One of the staff drunk himself into a daze and assumed I was a prostitute. When he tried to purchase my services, I refused him. Then he lashed out and tried to attack me. I broke his arm in 3 different places, then was arrested. Apparently my being an outsider discounts the fact I was the real victim, Sei explained with a scowl. This didn't surprise the Kitsune at all, given what a backwards way of life these Konoha people lived. I see. To be honest, Sei-san, I am in need of someone of your skills. Would you consider being hired as a bodyguard? Kurama asked in a businesslike manner. The prisoner merely scoffed and replied, I am sure a noblewoman like yourself does need bodyguards. Why not hire some samurai? At her statement, the Kitsune burst out laughing so hard that some tears fell down her caramel-colored skin, puzzling the flame user why she was laughing. You assume that I am a noblewoman? Asked the Kitsune with a certain mirth in her voice, clearly amused at being mistaken for nobility. You mean to say you are not? But the way you dress, how you carry yourself, your perfect body, it all points to you being of noble birth. Sei responded, her expression showing confusion at this revelation. I am not. I am just a humble mother. And it is not myself that needs protecting, but my child. I cannot be with him all the time, nor am I all-knowing or omnipotent. I cannot be everywhere at once. That is why I find myself in need of people like you. I know your people do not back out of a bargain and are true to your word. How about this? Tomorrow I shall pay for release. The only stipulation is that you come with me as soon as my boy awakens in the hospital. Then you may decide for yourself if you wish for the job or not. The Kitsune offered with a small smile. No other strings attached? Sei asked. This woman seemed genuine enough, but she wasn't about to put blind faith in a stranger. No other strings attached. You have my solemn word. The Kitsune confirmed. The two looked at each other for a long moment as a silent understanding passed between them. They both nodded to each other. With their business concluded, the pink-eyed Kitsune continued on her way towards where Mabuki was being kept. Outside the designated interrogation chamber where Mabuki was staying, both Inoichi and Ibiki were arguing over the Kizashi investigation. The former was expressing his certainty that Mabuki was innocent, while Ibiki kept persisting that she may still have a vital piece of evidence. Are you sure there weren't anything like memory gaps? Asked the head interrogator with a scowl. The clan head replied back while frowning, yes, I am sure. I didn't find any traces of memory gaps or other mental tampering in case she bribed one of my clansmen to wipe off any memories of importance. She is innocent, I am sure of it. At this point, Kurama approached and cleared her throat to get her attention. When they turned, Inoichi immediately recognized her from the description his daughter provided when she told him that Naruto's adoptive mother exposed both Irika and Mizuki's rigged classes. Not to mention he had to attend that trial such a short time ago. It was utterly satisfying to see the civilians and the Uchiha brat get put in their places. You are Kurama, aren't you? I am sorry we haven't been properly introduced. Inoichi Yamanaka. You must be here from Ibuki-san, right? Before she could answer his question, Ibiki stepped between them and sent a hard glare at the Kitsune, as though he were trying to make her burst into flames or break apart like an eggshell. Why is it that you keep showing up, I wonder? He asked more to himself. I don't know what you're talking about, Ibiki-san. From where I am standing, I feel like you're the only interrogator in Konoha. Where's Anko? Is she all right? My son being injured really upset her. She asked, both out of genuine worry for Anko and to change the subject of the conversation before Ibiki started to get any ideas in his head. Oh, Anko? She was still worried about the kid, so I let her have some time off. I swear, she is almost like his waifu or something. Then again, that might bring some stability in her life. And where'd she go? He asked at the end when he realized Kurama had slipped past him and into the interrogation room while he was talking. Okay. That was pretty slick, commented Inoichi, who was impressed by how she managed to take advantage of his momentary distraction. The TNI expert grumbled his agreement, but still had that nagging feeling about that thrice-damned Kurama woman. But for now, he would wait with his associate and see if Kurama can get something out of Mabuki. Inside the interrogation room, Mabuki was still handcuffed to the table and held by long chain, her head resting in her hands. She looked tired, as evidenced by the dark circles under her eyes and her hair being a mess. Not surprising, since she had received news that her husband was murdered. She had been written out of his will hours before his death. Everything was left to some whore, and to top it off, she was now being accused of partaking in the murder by hiring the assassin who killed Kizashi. Suffice it to say, Mabuki Haruno was not having a good time. Hello there, Mabuki-san. I am Kurama, was about to introduce herself but was cut off by the blonde woman who didn't even bother looking up at her. I know who you are. You're Kurama-sama, you're all my husband ever talked about. It was like you were Kami's gift from heaven. He wouldn't even touch me no matter how hard I tried to rekindle our marriage. He would also talk about you in his sleep. He wouldn't shut up about your silky blood-red hair, your creamy baby soft caramel skin. It was like you became the single most important thing in his life. He wouldn't even pay attention to his own daughter. You ruined me. With my husband dead, and without his will, I am left with nothing. How can I provide for my daughter now? Why are you even here? To mock me? To gloat at the woman whose life you have all but destroyed? What more do you want to take from me? The blonde woman cried out before breaking into tears, her emotional limits reaching their breaking point. The kitsune offered a sympathetic smile, and gently placed the basket of goods in front of Mabuki. Actually, I came to give you this to help you out a bit. And I came to find Kizashi's killer, of course. The pink-eyed woman spoke in a gentle tone. You and everyone else. I have been poked and prodded by both Ibiki and Inoichi for hours. Hell, I had to get mind-raped 3 times to prove my innocence. I am done with this. Just leave me alone, you damned vultures. The blonde woman screamed as she threw the basket of goods at Kurama, who snatched it out of midair, then caught all the stray treats in a single sweeping motion with the basket before placing it back on the table between them. Now. Let's not waste any of this. Kurama spoke in a sickly sweet tone with enough venom to make Mabuki think twice before having another outburst like that. The kitsune leaned in closer to the point. Her rose-pink eyes were but inches away from the blonde woman's eyes, then gently patted her cheek. I thought you might enjoy some food that wasn't made in prison. I suggest you enjoy this right now, or I will eat it all in front of you. The kitsune spoke while reaching for an apple. Mabuki swallowed hard as her stomach grumbled. She then snatched away the basket and started cramming food in her mouth, not even bothering with table manners at this point. See? Was that so hard? You know I can understand why you worry for your child. I too am a mother, commented the crimson-haired woman to build rapport with the woman sitting in front of her. Really? Do you even know who the father is? It was Kizashi, wasn't it? Asked Mabuki with her mouth full, slightly muffling her words. She was surprised when the caramel-skinned woman burst into a hearty and melodious laughter. After some moments, her laughter ceased and she quipped back with a small smile. Firstly, I said I was a mother. I didn't say I actually gave birth to a child. Secondly, and to ease your conscience, I never once slept with your late husband, much less any one of my clients. Mabuki and the 2 shinobi listening in were surprised by this bit of information. Didn't she work at a club for that sort of thing? The blonde woman swallowed hard and asked in a perplexed and confused tone, BB, but aren't you a prostitute? The kitsune waved her finger from side to side while tsuking. She then replied in a matter-of-fact tone, prostitutes sell their bodies for money. I, as an escort, sell my time. There is a very large difference. Sometimes men, and occasionally women, just want someone to talk to. Someone they can be open with about their deepest feelings that they're embarrassed to admit to others. That is the type of service I offer. An ear to listen, a shoulder to cry on, soothing words to ease anger and frustration. And my clients pay me handsomely for my services, though some still think, like your husband did, that if they kept coming back then I would sleep with them. I honestly detest one-night stands. But I digress. Your husband Kizashi's fascination with me became unhealthy. So I had to remove him from my list of clientele. No doubt signing over the will to me was a vain attempt at getting back in my good graces. Now then, think very carefully, who is it that is truly at fault for your failing and now broken marriage? Was it me? Or Kizashi? The kitsune asked at the end, since humans had the odd habit of blaming the person that their significant other was sleeping with or seeing instead of the significant others themselves. It was Kizashi. Mabuki replied bitterly. She couldn't bring herself to hate this woman. It came to her memory that Kizashi would sometimes ask himself why his precious Kurama-sama wouldn't have sex with him. Now what this woman was saying made sense. And she obviously felt a certain sense of responsibility for coming here herself, and was extending an olive branch. Look, Mabuki-san, I am terribly sorry for any grief I may have causes you. Once you get out of prison, I shall let you and your child stay with me and my boy until you get back on your feet. But in order to speed up the process of your release, I suggest you think very hard on who the killer may be. Kurama spoke while lacing her fingers together, a playful smile forming on her face. Again with that? How many times do I have to say it? I don't. No. I don't even know how money was missing from the safe. Only me and Kizashi knew the combination. Mabuki replied while stuffing an apple in her mouth and chewing noisily to eat her frustrations. Really? Are you certain? Kizashi told me a lot of things, including some of his more shady business dealings. The pink-eyed woman spoke with her eyes flashing crimson for a brief moment. What are you getting at? What is your point? Asked Mabuki in a confused manner. Outside, both Inoichi and Ibiki raised their eyebrows at this interesting development. What was Kurama implying exactly? Let's see. I remember that in one of them he met someone that was a Yamanaka. Let's see, what was the name again? Fu Yamanaka. The kitsune spoke as she feigned remembering the name. The pieces of her game were now put into place. Now the dominoes would fall into place. Fu Yamanaka, wait. I remember someone by that name. A guy with orange hair, right? Mabuki asked, now remembering said Yamanaka having come to her home and speaking with her husband on occasion. Suddenly it all made sense. A Yamanaka could have stolen the safe combination from her or her husband's mind in order to frame her. Outside the interrogation room, Ibiki turned towards the clan head for an explanation. Inoichi sensed his colleague's questioning gaze and spoke, I only know him in passing. He doesn't really socialize and keeps to himself. I don't even know him that well, but I do know, my god, he has connections to Danzo. At that, Ibiki's eyes widened slightly. If Kizashi was involved with the likes of Danzo, it was no wonder he ended up dead. Was this whole chain of events part of some big cover-up? What was it Kizashi knew that required him to be silenced? Regardless, this Fuyamanaka seemed to be the missing piece. He was still suspicious of Kurama and how she conveniently knew this information, but he had other priorities at this time. The two nodded at each other in silent agreement, both having the same line of thought as Inoichi departed for his clan's residencies to question Fu. Ibiki, however, would need to make arrangements for Mabuki's immediate release. The whole time he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off about that Kurama woman. No matter how he looked at it, everything was too perfect. As soon as Fu Yamanaka was found and questioned, he would turn his sights on unraveling the mysteries of Kurama Kitsune. Meanwhile, Mayan. I am bored. There's nothing to do in here. Naruto complained as he laid flat on the floor since there was nothing but a never-ending field of white. He had already spent most of his time spent thinking about what Kushina told him about their clan and history. He felt angry and betrayed by the Sandaime for withholding such information from him, including the identity of his parents. He also felt angry at how his clan was so easily forgotten by the world. When the Uchihas were slaughtered, everyone was up in arms about it. When Konoha's closest ally, an entire village and clan, was wiped out, it was like they deliberately tried to forget about them. Then came news about his godparents. As soon as he got out of his mindscape, then he would make sure that he got his dues. Kushina was in a similar position, whining a bit childishly. She hated boredom and sitting still for long periods of time. And frankly, the eerie silence of this realm was driving her crazy. She needed to fill this deafening silence with something. Did Kurama teach you about the birds and the bees? She asked randomly, making the blonde boy flush furiously. Yeah. She did. It was absolute torture. Naruto muttered, trying not to think back on that painful event. It didn't help his mother Kurama started encouraging him to start looking for a girlfriend or 10. She also mentioned something about having lots of grandbabies to spoil. Did she teach you how to pleasure a woman? The violet-eyed woman asked in a teasing tone, making the boy glow neon red from embarrassment. He wasn't going to dignify that question with an answer. I'll take that as a no. Well, you'll learn soon enough. Anyways, we should find a way out of here, spoke the female Uzumaki as she got up from the ground. Now was as good a time as any to leave. How? There's nothing here. The blonde boy spoke with a sweat drop. Your mind. Imagine there's a door out of here or something, she replied with a shrug. Naruto sighed and began to try and concentrate on the first plausible means of escaping. He pictured a doorway to the outside world and felt something materialize in front of him. And there it was, a doorway. Nice. Hey, Kushina-san? When we get out of here, I look forward to making a blood clone for you so we can get to know each other better. A fresh start. He spoke with a smile, causing her to nod at this. Even though the bond between mother and son had never formed between them, he didn't hate her or want to leave her behind. He wanted her to stay with him to help fill in the missing pieces of his life. If she could help make him happy, then that'd be enough. In the real world. Konoha Hospital. Done. Finally. Spoke Samui in her seat as she had just finished writing, put her letter to the rakeage, explaining her capture and release. Now she just had to send it and wait. She looked at her fellow blonde who was resting in the bed. She had watched over him for some time and felt a great deal of sympathy for him. Her sensei Killer Bee was treated with the respect he deserved in Kumo, but it seemed that the people of Konoha didn't share the trait of respect for their own Jinchuriki. She looked down at the letter for a brief moment and decided that it wouldn't hurt to walk out for 5 minutes to get it sent. It was very much important to appraise her rakeage of recent events and avoid some type of incident. I'll be back soon. I promise. Your mother is a cool person, by the way. Samui spoke as she gently stroked the boy's cheek. She suddenly caught herself and wondered if she was already developing some type of attachment to him. She supposed it was protective instincts or something like that and departed. She wouldn't be gone for more than 5 or 10 minutes. As soon as she left, the boy stirred in his bed. His eyes flickering open as he muttered, "Thought someone was talking to me." He tried to get up but clutched at his head in pain. He remembered a chair being thrown at him, but damn, was his head hurting right now. The gash on the side of his head felt like salt had been rubbed into it. Might be a good idea to call a nurse or send for his mother. He heard something open and sighed in relief that a nurse was entering. He was about to speak, but he felt cool flesh pressed gently against his mouth, which silenced him. Shhhhhhhhhh, don't be scared of me. Bad people are coming. Coming to hurt you. Do bad things to you. I will keep you safe. Spoke a quiet feminine voice as a pair of yellow serpentine eyes came into view with an almost ethereal glow. Goff can. Not again, the boy yelled out in a muffled voice. Was the universe or some unholy entity punishing him for some reason? What did he ever do except want a family and parents? Shh, sleep. I will take you someplace safe. My name is Kira. I swear to protect you with my life. The girl spoke before exhaling a pink gas into his face. He felt drowsy and suddenly drifted back into unconsciousness. When his eyes opened again, he found himself back inside the Mindscape where Kushina was sitting on the floor. She tilted her head to the side in confusion and asked, back so soon? The hell happened? The blonde crossed his arms and glared into empty space, then muttered in an equally confused tone, I think I was just kidnapped by some weird girl who is trying to save me from bad people. Kurama is going to flip out then tear apart the village looking for me. I know that much. The thought sent a few shivers down his spine. But for now, he would have to wait to wake up again. Who was this Kira girl? Where did she come from and why was she protecting him, or claiming to at least, and who were the bad people looking for him? Regardless, he was certain of one thing: something very bad is going to happen soon. End Chapter 1. Chapter 4, Circles Within Circles. In the area of Konoha owned by the Yamanaka clan, Inoichi was banging quite loudly against the entrance of the apartment owned by Fu Yamanaka, who is now a primary suspect in the murder of Kizashi Haruno. Fu! Open up! This is Inoichi, your clan head. Either you are coming out or I am coming in. The clan head roared furiously. Behind him were the eternal Chunin, who were there to provide backup. Maybe he's not home? Izumo asked while rubbing the back of his head. Inoichi crossed his arms at the possibility. Turning his head to the side, he noticed that the apartment's mailbox was crammed full of several days' worth of mail. Seemed like Fu hasn't been home for some time. Did he skip town before Kizashi's murder? Deciding to investigate further, Inoichi lifted his foot up and kicked the door open. It crunched beneath his heel as it swung open from the force of his kick. Their noses were immediately assaulted by a foul odor, making the eternal Chunin cough and gag as they asked what that stench was. The clan head immediately recognized the stench of decomposing flesh. He entered the apartment and saw a headless body lying on the floor, well on its way to becoming rotten. The arm of the corpse was clutching a messily packed suitcase with segments of clothing poking out from the closed lid. In the body's other hand was a passport marked for Fu Yamanaka. Seemed like they had found him. By the looks of things, Fu was in a hurry to leave Konoha. Then he was murdered and his head was taken. Was it meant to be a trophy or a forensic countermeasure? The clan head grimaced as he ordered for a forensic team to be brought in immediately. Things have gone from bad to worse, and now insane. Konoha Hospital. Samui-san? Whatever do you mean he was just gone? Spoke Kurama Kitsune with a madly twitching eyebrow, her aura seemingly draining all light from the world as the hospital shook all the way down to its foundations. If she kept up the pressure, then the whole building may implode. It is just as I explained. I swear. I went to send off my letter to my Reikage, and when I came back 5 minutes later he was gone. And this was left in his place. Samui spoke quickly and offered a slip of paper in order to appease Kurama and avoid possible spontaneous combustion. The Kitsune snatched it away and began reading its contents. We have your son. He is safe with us. We will return him once the threat is over. The note said, making Kurama narrow her rose-pink eyes. It seemed like there was more going on than she knew. These people had taken her child to protect him? She crumpled the note in her clenched fist. Confusion and fury coursing through her body. This seemed to be a highly unusual case, but still she would take every measure possible to see her child returned home unharmed. Now might be a good time to call up some friends and favors to find her child. She pointed at Samui and spoke in a chilly tone of voice. Samui-san, you will help me find my son immediately. And if anything bad has happened to him, I promise to ensure the rest of your natural life will be filled with nothing but pain, suffering, and despair. The blonde woman could only nod, since she was indeed responsible for leaving the boy alone, which led to his own kidnapping. I understand. I'll go search the outer parts of the village and work my way until I find him. What will you do? She asked at the end while performing some stretches to prepare herself for a village-wide search. Aside from searching for my child? I have friends that can help. She replied in a blunt manner. The Kitsune was busy using her unique connection to her son to seek out his presence or location, but she was met with nothing but darkness and silence. He must have been unconscious and is being held someplace, or has certain seals to disrupt his chakra. These kidnappers seemed to know how to cover their tracks, since she couldn't smell them or sense any residual chakra. Nor did they ask for ransom and claimed that they were protecting him. From who? And why? With a scowl she exited the hospital, her senses on high alert for even the slightest hints of her son's presence. Her first stop would be home to make some calls, most particularly the Ice Queens who so loved Naruto with all their hearts, and they would stop at nothing to see him safe. Naturally, Suminosuke herself may get involved as well. Kurama thought about bringing this to the Hokage, but then she didn't wish to cause a major incident and bring unwanted attention to herself or, more importantly, her son. Her musing was broken when she felt something tug on her kimono. Turning around, she was met with the form of a young girl, a street urchin as evidenced by her ragged clothes and dirty body. She looked up at Kurama with a single bright blue eye that reminded the kitsune of her own child. The girl's freckled cheeks widened as she let a cute smile appear on her face. "Any money to spare, ma'am? My friends are really hungry," she asked while holding out her hands. "Well now, aren't you a cute little thing? What might your name be?" Kurama asked sweetly. From the faint sense on the girl's body, the hospital must be one of her usual begging spots. If she was observant enough, she might have seen Naruto being taken out by his kidnappers. "My friends all call me Doll. You seem like a nice person, so could you please spare just a little?" the girl asked a little more desperately as a deep rumble came from her thin stomach. A sympathetic smile came across the kitsune's face as she produced a fat wad of cash from the valley of her breasts, the girl's mouth seemingly drooling at the thought of using some of that money to buy food, her stomach roaring in hunger now. "A quick question if I may, did you see anyone leaving or being taken out of the hospital? This person is very distinctive, bright golden blonde hair, whisker-like birthmarks on his face. Cannot possibly be missed." The kitsune questioned, silently praying that this girl may have seen something. "Oh, you mean that boy? I saw him. He was being carried away by two girls down the alley. They passed by me, but I don't think they really noticed me. It seemed like they were in a rush." Doll replied quickly. If this woman was looking for that kid, then she might reward her for being helpful. "The girls? Describe them. Did they hurt my child? Where did they take him?" Kurama asked while placing a hand on the girl's shoulder, her claw-like nails slightly digging into Doll's soft flesh, making her wince. She took a breath, then answered the worried mother, "I didn't see where they took him. Aside from some bandages on his head, it didn't look like they hurt him, and they were super careful when they carried him around. One of them was super pale, like she had never seen daylight in her life, and she had these creepy snake-like yellow eyes. The other girl looked about the boy's age. She seemed pretty ordinary. Pretty thing with black hair and wore glasses, but I thought for a second that I saw her eyes flash red." Kurama raised an eyebrow, her own pink eyes flashing red for a brief moment as she placed the wad of cash into the girl's hand and spoke in a grateful tone, "Thank you, Doll-san. Your assistance is greatly appreciated." She rubbed the girl's head with a small smile, her action brushing aside the girl's bangs, revealing the disfigured part of her face and eye. Doll immediately slapped Kurama's hand away as she tried to hide the scarring with her bangs again, but the kitsune stopped her and placed a finger over the girl's mouth to silence her before she could even speak. "Who did this to you?" she asked in a stern tone, moving her finger aside to let the girl answer. "My parents," Doll answered, feeling much like an insect placed beneath a microscope. This woman's pink eyes, formerly filled with kindness, now held a sharp edge to them. She was surprised when the pink-colored orb softened and a single tear fell from the woman's eye. The crimson-haired woman surprised her further when she began tenderly stroking the scarred side of her face, showing absolutely no disgust for looking at or touching it. Poor sweet girl. As a mother, I believe that parents who don't love their children have no right to exist. Wherever your parents may be, I hope that the world was cruel to them. Now then, here. Magic kisses." The kitsune spoke as she placed her soft lips on the girl's scarring, just above her missing eye. Doll stiffened up before she slowly started to fall limp, her legs giving out as though her bones had turned into jelly. A sudden warmth came over her face as feelings of euphoria overcame her. Everything felt good to her now. The woman's silky soft lips, the crisp and cool breeze flowing down the street, the sun's warm rays bathing her skin, it all made her body feel like it was melting from the inside out. She slowly sank to her knees since she couldn't support her own weight anymore, but Kurama lifted her up, resulting in Doll's legs hanging uselessly from the ground by a few inches. Doll tried to suck in some air through her nose since she felt a lack of oxygen, but her lungs and windpipe refused to obey her commands to receive life-giving oxygen. She heard that suffocation was a terrible way to die, that some people have described it as their lungs feeling like they're going to explode, but this. It felt like she was drifting to sleep. Peacefully falling asleep and drifting away like a soft and fluffy little cloud being carried away by the wind. Her fingers twitched as even her brain seemed to be malfunctioning. The taste of warm apple pie danced on her tongue as faint echoes of memories swam through her vision. It was like watching the ripples made by a stone being dropped in the water, but in slow motion. Now every single heartbeat seemed slower than the last. Every time the quieting bob-bump came, she felt like losing control over her bladder. This was it. She genuinely believed she was going to die in a strange, blissful agony of nirvana. Finally she felt life and function return to her body as Kurama broke off the kiss, A thick coating of sweat covered Doll's skin, soaking her clothes and making them stick to her body. She gasped for air, thanking Kami that hellish world of pleasure was now over. Kurama chuckled slightly as she spoke while placing a hand on her head. My apologies. I forget that my unique chakra can be rather intense for humans, even in tiny amounts. If I kept going, well, let's not worry about that. Here. Have a look at the new you. The crimson-haired woman clicked open a compact mirror and revealed that where was once marred and burnt flesh was now smooth and unblemished aside from her freckles. And now she had a second blue eye as well, like it had always been there. Don't forget this, spoke the kitsune as she picked up the money the girl had dropped while she was indisposed, and placed it back into her hand. With that good deed done, she turned on her heel to resume the search for her son. The girl was definitely good for giving her some information about the kidnappers, not to mention that while she was healing the girl's scarring she had caught the sense of the kidnappers and her child, which would now show her the way. Good. She could now handle this quietly by herself and prevent the Ice Queens from unnecessarily worrying. No need to cause them unnecessary anguish or fright. Wait. You fixed me. Does that mean you can help my friends too? Doll asked, her voice taking on a wheezy tone since her body was still recovering from that pleasantly awful experience. My apologies. But I don't have the time. I must find my child. I only healed you because you aided me and I have a weakness for broken things. I hope you use that money wisely. Kurama spoke in a more dismissive manner as she began to walk away, her Geta sandals making a clack-clack noise with each step. She felt the girl tug on her kimono again. Kurama was a patient woman, but this girl was seriously testing her patience since she had to find Naruto. And quickly. If we help you, will you help us? You are trying to find your kid, right? The blonde one that was taken? We can help. We know these streets easily. Please. Some of my friends need to be fixed. She cried out almost desperately since she had been subjected to what could only be described as a miracle. Kurama pursed her lips for a moment, humming slightly to herself in thought. She didn't really need any aid right now to find her son. But there was something else this girl could do for her. While she could do it herself, it would be far more convenient to have someone else do it instead. With a flick of her wrist, she summoned a sheet of paper and a pencil and began scribbling down something. She handed the paper to Doll, who took it and read it over. There was a phone number and address along with a set of instructions which read, call this number if you need help or wait for me at my home address. Otherwise, I'll come to find you after I find my child. As soon as Doll looked up to ask about the curious nature of this woman's kindness, but the red-haired woman was gone from sight. Seeing no other options at this time, it would probably be best to simply do as she asks. Nodding to herself, the brown-haired girl ran off to find her friends. She had to tell them about everything that happened and she couldn't wait to show off her healed eye. Meanwhile, "Ow wow wow. My head," Naruto muttered to himself, as he slowly sat up. His nose twitching as he smelled ramen? He looked about to take in his surroundings. It seemed like he was in a warehouse someplace, his body kept warm with a soft and fuzzy blanket laid over his body, his head rested on a fluffy and comfortable pillow. Sitting a short ways off from him was a young girl, about his age, maybe, wearing a pair of spectacles as she tended to a pot of boiling ramen over a portable cooking instrument. She looked in his direction and gave a friendly wave to him and spoke in a very cheery tone of voice, "Hello, Naruto-sama. I am so glad you're awake. Your meal is almost finished, so please be patient." The blonde was confused. This was one of his kidnappers? He wasn't expecting a cute girl, which meant this was either going to be surprisingly pleasant or very painful if she was one of those Yandere types. "Who are you?" was the only intelligent question he could find at this time. The girl simply smiled for a brief moment, then bit her lip as if she were unsure how to answer him. Her eyes then lit up and face began beaming as though she had found a proper response, and replied to him, "My name is Sarada Uzumaki. And I am your daughter from the future." The blonde stared at her like she had grown a second head. Was she crazy or what? Sensing his disbelief, Sarada smiled wider and spoke, "You told me your biggest secret. Your adoptive mother Kurama Kitsune is actually the QB inside of a blood clone you made." Naruto's jaw fell slack. He hadn't told anyone his secret yet. Not a single soul. Not even his closest friends, the Ice Queens of Konoha, knew. But time travel is impossible," he muttered out in shock and denial. "Naruto-sama, there is jutsu in the world that can summon the Shinigami and reanimate the dead. I don't think time travel is that much of a stretch. We live in a world of impossible after all," she assured him, then took the readied ramen and swiftly served him a bowl, placing it in his lap along with a pair of chopsticks. He paid the ramen no attention. He couldn't believe he had a kid this cute in the future. Who was the mother? This Sarada girl, she seemed sweet enough, a bit tomboyish maybe. If he had to take a guess, the mother must be either Anko or maybe Tenten. I guess I should explain things from the beginning. My biological parents are Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno. My father was always neglectful and traveling around so he might one day defeat you, and when I graduated from the academy, My mother said I was mature enough to take care of myself and started to follow Sasuke around like a puppy. She explained her origins, making Naruto do a double take on what she said. How the hell did an emo asshole and a hormone-driven fangirl make such a cute kid? She cleared her throat and continued, after that, you adopted me into your family. You were so kind and caring and made me feel loved and wanted. Like I actually meant something to you. You were more of a parent to me than my real parents, if they can be called that. Despite being the Hokage, you always made time for your family, no matter what came up or how trivial some may believe it to be. I was so inspired by you, I trained myself night and day to become one of your elite Guard. However, our family wasn't entirely perfect. Your other daughter Himawari was very shy but warmed up to me and became the best little sister I could have asked for, but your son Boruto was a brat. He often pulled numerous pranks as a means of getting attention, much like yourself as a boy, but soon he became an ingrate and became distant from his own family, and so he began training under Sasuke Uchiha. You were concerned about the kind of company that Boruto was keeping and tried to warn him about my father's violent history, but your son didn't heed your warnings and claimed that you were trying to keep him from growing as a shinobi. That is when things began to go south. Some years later, during a golden age ushered in by yourself, Sasuke re-emerged and tried to pull off a coup on you. It failed since you were too powerful for him. Knowing his plot was failing, Sasuke used a Sharingan technique called Kamui to create a portal through time and sent several assassins to kill you in your boyhood. And so I, your personal bodyguard, and your attack dog Kira followed after to protect you from harm. And so here we are. We needed to take you from the hospital because the assassins were getting too close. The whiskered teen sat silently for a few moments before speaking in a half-serious manner. I feel like this is part of a sci-fi movie. The black-haired girl chuckled lightly at the joke, fully understanding what he meant by that. Agreed. I am sorry about kidnapping you, and your mother must be really worried. But please cooperate for right now. I promise to keep you safe, and if there's anything you need, just ask me. She spoke as she reached over and placed a hand on her shoulder, followed by a short and sweet kiss on his cheek, making him blush slightly. Right, where is that Kira girl you mentioned? He asked to change the subject, a small amount of shyness overcoming him. What she does best, was all Sarada said with a sadistic gleam in her eye, reminding Naruto of his pal Enko. The Uchiha girl then smiled sweetly and poked him slightly in the ribs as she spoke. Come on. Try my ramen. I almost figured out the legendary Ichiraku recipe. Try it. It's good. He chuckled slightly now, feeling more comfortable in her presence. Sure, the whole time travel thing knocked him for a loop, but it explained some things, not to mention she wasn't wrong. If a jutsu can summon the Shinigami, then time travel was certainly a possibility. He sensed no ill intent from her, so maybe for now he'll just go along with it. But one thing did concern him. What was it that Kira did best? Meanwhile, in a local park, Kira sat alone on a small bench, her skin tingling under the warm rays of the sun. Her serpentine eyes staring ahead and occasionally looking about for any signs of the ones seeking to kill her master. While most people only use their eyes and occasionally hearing to navigate, Kira herself was far more evolved. Her bare feet were planted firmly on the ground, detecting the slightest vibrations created in the earth. For the most part, she only sensed children running about and playing or adults walking by, minding their own business. Her chakra senses were also on high alert, searching for any signatures she might recognize. And her nose was detecting thousands upon thousands of different scents, none belonging to her prey. The vibrations created from small children's feet approached her. She turned towards the source and saw what seemed to be a cardboard box with some crude drawings to make it look like a very unconvincing rock with eye holes in the front. Her ears twitched as she heard and felt the vibrations made by breathing and the heartbeat of a young boy. Come out. She spoke in a blank tone of voice, but her request went unheeded since the watcher hadn't dropped the poor camouflage. Sighing, Kira took a breath, then exhaled a pink-colored gas through the box's eye holes. The sounds of giggling followed by full-blown laughter was heard as the box's occupant was unable to resist a mild dosage of laughing gas. The boy underneath threw off the box, hiding his presence, and pointed at the pale girl. Why, you see, caught me. Nice job, pale lady. He spoke between giggles. After a few moments, the effects of the laughing gas wore off, allowing him to catch his breath. You must be wondering who I am. I am Konohamaru, grandson of the Sandaime Hokage, and future Hokage of this village, he loudly declared, fully expecting that this woman would suddenly start bowing and being all respectful. He was surprised by the fact she didn't seem to be paying attention to him since she was staring off into the distance. How nice for you, she replied in a dismissive manner while patting his head as if he were a puppy. You don't even care I'm the Hokage's grandson? He asked, since it was the first time someone had actually treated him like an actual person or a normal kid, and not simply as the relative of a Hokage. Why should I? You'd still be you, she replied as if it were the most simple thing in the world, which made the small boy jaw drop in surprise. For once maybe he could actually make a real friend who wasn't going to kiss up to him. That's cool. So what's your name? he asked since he wanted to know who this girl was. He had never seen her before, but she looked vaguely familiar. He remembered seeing someone that looked an awful lot like her in his grandfather's pictures. Maybe she was a relative? Kira, was all she said as she expanded her senses further. The ones hunting for her master wouldn't be able to hide themselves for much longer. They would need to surface sooner or later if they were going to harm her Naruto-sama. She tensed up as she felt a very powerful chakra signature, perhaps one of the few entities that Kira was wary of. Go home, silly boy. This isn't a safe place anymore, spoke the pale girl as her serpentine eyes glowed a bright yellow. Konohamaru tilted his head in confusion, then felt a hand grip his shoulder, making him stiffen up and swallow nervously. Sound advice. Run along, child, spoke a second female voice that whispered into his ear. This one sounded like the voice of a mature and dignified woman, but there was a chilling malice to it that made his heart feel like it was exploding in his chest with every beat. Gulping, he meekly nodded and ran off, leaving a dust cloud in his wake. With that little bystander gone, the second female casually sat down on the park bench and spoke in a voice that sounded sickly sweet. Very nice day. Would be an absolute shame to ruin it, yes? Kira could only nod in agreement, her eyes staring ahead at the nearby playground where the little children were playing. Yes. Lovely Kyubi-san, spoke the pale girl, hoping that announcing her knowledge of the kitsune's true identity might ease some of the tension. It did, since the bijou raised an eyebrow, her malice now replaced by intrigue. Oh? You know who I am, eh? That is interesting. Where did you learn that? Kurama asked while pulling a box of chocolates that she so happened to pick up on the way. Popping one into her mouth to eat it, her pink eyes never leaving the girl's form. From your son. In the future, the yellow-eyed girl answered bluntly. The kitsune regarded her answer for a short while. Time travel was a fickle and extremely unpredictable ability with many damning consequences that not even her father would be foolish enough to dabble in. In a best case, meddling with time could cause time loops to randomly appear, and at the very worst rip apart the universe at the seams until it is torn apart and twisted inside out, and then the universe would become a lifeless void of nothingness. Time travel. Not a very reliable technique. To use it means carelessness, stupidity, ignorance, or desperation depending upon the circumstances of said usage. Kurama commented smoothly as she devoured another chocolate, her ears twitching as she listened to the girl's heartbeat, which was still beating calmly. We didn't use it. It was used by Sasuke Uchiha after he failed to kill Naruto-sama. The pale girl answered briefly to sum it up, her chakra senses starting to detect her quarry, but she was still unable to pinpoint them. Wherever they were being extra careful. Kurama frowned as she chewed on another piece of chocolate. Even in the future that Uchiha brat was being a nuisance, it might prove beneficial to the world if she strangled him in his sleep. But for now, she had bigger plans and higher priorities. Killing Kizashi was a spur-of-the-moment move since he threatened her child, but she didn't kill him without a plan. Now the dominoes were falling and she couldn't allow for a distraction to derail her plans. As you say. I received your note. If you are protecting my child, then there must be something to protect him from, yes? The kitsune noted with a small scowl. If anything threatened her kid, then she'd eliminate it. Yes. Root Umbu. In the future, Sasuke took it over after the elder Danzo was executed by Naruto-sama. Plus they are led by one other whom I will enjoy eating. Kira answered with a hint of anger to her voice. Kurama raised an eyebrow at her statement, but then caught the scent of human flesh on this girl's breath. She was a cannibal beyond all doubt, but if her son trusted her in the future, then she must be both loyal and reliable enough to dismiss this simple fact. Root, you say? This may provide me an opportunity to accelerate my plans a bit. Now then, I wish to see my child. Now. The kitsune spoke at the end with intense emphasis, showing she wouldn't be taking no for an answer. I refuse. Kira bluntly replied, causing Kurama to bristle in anger, her pink eyes turning blood red as she got up with her claws extending out. To any normal person, this would be cause enough to shrink in fear. But Kira did not feel fear as normal humans did, likely because she never understood the concept of it. She felt something pierce her flesh in her abdomen, causing the pale cannibal to look down and see she had been pierced by one of Kurama's claws. She felt discomfort but no pain. Take me to my son. The kitsune demanded again, maternal instincts to protect her kid guiding her actions. Her patience having melted away after being refused. A small hissing noise was picked up by her sensitive ears as she looked down, and saw that this girl's blood wasn't red but a dark purple color that was melting her claw. She immediately retracted it and flung off the acidic blood. This girl, she most definitely wasn't human. I refuse. I will not risk exposing Naruto-sama to those who hunt him. Hurt me all you like, I cannot feel pain anyway. No matter what you do, my priority is to keep Naruto-sama safe. Don't you want him to be safe? Kira asked, her face showing a glimmer of sympathy. Her question made Kurama's eyes fade back to their usual pink color, her posture relaxing slightly as she answered in a measured tone of voice, you're right. I wasn't thinking clearly because of my connection and feelings toward him. And I must admit you are in the presence of one of the most powerful beings in the elemental nations, and you didn't even blink an eye. Impressive to say the least. If what you say is true, then the best way to ensure my kid's safety is to kill those that hunt him. Kira nodded in agreement, showing no anger for being injured, which had already remarkably healed without even a scar. Making Kurama smirk slightly. Venomous and acidic blood, pristine protective instincts and loyalty, and high-speed regeneration, this girl was utter fascinating. But she smelled odd. There were scents of venom, snakes, blood and decaying flesh all over her, but there were scents that reminded the kitsune of Uchiha's, Senju's, and Uzumaki's. Strange but intriguing to say the least. Indeed, Kurama-sama. But these people know me too well. They went to many extremes to learn to hide their presence from me. But not from you. Any suggestions? Kira asked, since she felt this problem could be solved more quickly if she and Kurama worked together to handle this. The kitsune pursed her lips together in thought as she considered her options. Then an idea struck her mind as a wicked grin crossed her face. I do have one. Could you assist me in a little head hunting? The Bijou asked in an almost jovial voice, belying the sinister intentions behind her tone. Always. Slaughter is, of course, my specialty. The cannibal answered coldly, her hands twitching as she was quite eager for something to kill right now. And if this plan of Kurama's kept Naruto safe, then all the better. Meanwhile, I don't think cause of death needs to be said. Ibiki Marino commented dryly while looking at the headless, half-rotten corpse of Fu Yamanaka, with one Inoichi nodding in agreement as the medic Nin took the body away. What do we tell Hokage-sama? Asked the clan head in an unsure tone. This was way bigger than a simple clan affair or an assassination. This was a full-blown conspiracy. And such internal problems usually needed to be handled with care. If the wrong people found out, things could get a lot worse. Ibiki clenched his fists tightly as he thought about it before finally giving his answer the truth. Kizashi was a possible collaborator involved with Danzo, maybe even Root, and Fu Yamanaka was his contact. Both having been silenced for reasons unknown. He spoke bitterly, since he felt this was all too convenient. Ever since that Kurama woman appeared, things just seemed to flow in a way to him that seemed staged in a very subtle manner. Her surviving the assassination, remembering Kizashi's dealings involving Fu Yamanaka, and now even Fu was dead. In the background, Inoichi was busy taking some notes, for later, since Fu was still a member of his clan. Ibiki, however, noticed something off about the bloodstains painting the floor. Leaning down, he touched at the stains and found they hadn't fully dried out yet. They were still somewhat sticky to the touch. He scratched his chin and wondered how the bloodstains could not have dried yet the body was already half rotten. Only two explanations came to mind. Either Fu was killed someplace else then put in here, blood splashed about the place to make it look like a murder. Or he was indeed killed here and some unknown technique was used to make his body rot faster. He grit his teeth hard. It would seem he would need to call out Kurama on the spot. He would not allow her to continue this charade for much longer. And by damn, he wasn't going to let her make him out to be a fool. End chapter 4. What if Naruto has adopted Mother Council bashing? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.